Chapter 1863. Jiang Pingji wanted to say, "I don't understand," but she was silent when she saw the marshal's penetrating gaze. He's an adult now. He had 3 children and 2 lives. How could he be considered underage at this age? His Excellency, the marshal laughed. What I mean is that his physical age is underage, not his mental age. His bone age and his registered age are underage. The robot that protects him cannot be revoked. The Federation matches every child with a family nanny robot. It will provide comprehensive protection for the child from birth until they are 18 years old. Before the child is 18 years old, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, having a deep physical relationship is considered rape. Wuxia's situation is even more special. He's a person with abnormal embryonic genes. The protection period is from birth until death. The robot's protection mechanism is stronger. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She had been bragging about the federal law for so many years. It was the first time she wanted to hammer the guy who made it to death. The Human Federation had comprehensive protection mechanisms for infants, toddlers, children, teenagers, and youths under the legal age. When a fully developed newborn comes out of the nursery, it will be matched with a family nanny robot. Not to mention strangers. Even the child's parents can't hurt the child protected by the robot. The child's genes are bound to the family nanny robot. It won't be released until the child is 18 years old. Of course, the separation from the family nanny robot only means that the child has the ability to be independent and protect himself. It doesn't mean that they are an adult. 2,000 years ago, the age of adulthood in the Federation was 35 years old. Later, because of the war and the further development of technology, it was lowered to 30 years old. Even so, Wuxia was 1 year and 2 months away from adulthood. The most annoying thing was that he was a special agent. The standard of adulthood couldn't be measured by age. He still needed to pass the special department's intelligence and living ability test. Wuxia was an ancient person through and through. He didn't even know how to boil water. How could she expect him to learn how to live normally before he was 30 years old? Jiang Pingji only had one thought in her mind. She wanted to curse him 10,000 times in his face. The marshal seemed to enjoy seeing Jiang Pingji's depressed expression. He smiled and added fuel to the fire. Wuxia is also a hero who has made contributions to the Federation. Under the request of the original research institute, the robot bound to him has been upgraded to the ultimate state. If an outsider wants to harm him and does something that violates the robot manual, not only will it trigger the protection mechanism for the cub, but it will also put him on the blacklist, and he will also be automatically prosecuted. I hope you have a clear understanding of the seriousness of the matter. How strong was the fighting power of an ordinary household nanny robot? Jiang Pingji could not subdue her opponent without using her ultimate move. Only a small number of descendants of big shots could afford to use them because of their scarcity and high maintenance costs. The Federation was unable to supply them on a large scale. They were fully equipped and had considerable combat power. It was not a problem for Jiang Pingji to defeat them, but the time it took to subdue them was more than enough for the robots to send out a distress signal. The nanny robot sounded the alarm, and the nearby patrolling security robots would swarm over. Smiley face, angle, Jiang Pingji was speechless. In the eyes of the marshal, how lustful was Jiang Pingji. The marshal could not help but laugh. The future marshal of the Federation can't be tainted by such a thing. What do you think? She said. She just wanted to flip the table and smash things. Her legal partner of 2 lifetimes was now separated by a robot. The marshal, the old man, still asked her what to say. She said nothing. The marshal also knew that Jiang Pingji could not take his teasing. He laughed and ended the communication. Jiang Pingji was speechless. He's teasing you with the adjutant. Jiang Pingji looked at the place where the communication screen disappeared. A man with red hair and red eyes suddenly appeared beside her. Without a doubt, this man was the current sky brain of the Federation. Aren't you busy? Jiang Pingji could not help but roll her eyes. Skybrain had to maintain the entire virtual network. It was a huge project, yet it had the time to appear in front of her. After returning from the mission, Jiang Pingji found out about the relationship between Skybrain and the ancestors of the Jiang family. She did not expect that she had a higher authority than the marshal. No, because the marshal still controlled the emperor's head blade that restrained Sky Brain. Sky Brain was afraid of him. Therefore, Jiang Pingji and the marshal's authority were still the same for the time being. Unless Jiang Pingji became the next marshal. Sky Brain's cold face revealed a hint of a smile. From a certain point of view, you should be considered my descendant. Jiang Pingji was speechless. The ancestors of the Jiang family who married into the Jiang family 2,000 years ago are of the same origin as me. From this point of view, you are indeed considered my descendant. Jiang Pingji could not help but laugh. I thought it was a lie. I didn't expect it to be true. She was not curious about the history of the Jiang family. She was too lazy to find out who the Sky Brain brother who married into the Jiang family was. She only needed to know that Sky Brain was kind to her. That was enough. Of course, this kind of kindness was not much. If Sky Brain really valued the so-called descendants of the same origin, she would not be the only one left of the Jiang family's direct line of descent. Do you have a name? Sky Brain said. I don't have a name. If I really wanted to say a name, it's just a code name of king. After a while, Sky Brain asked Jiang Pingji. These old foxes of the Federation are really smart. They pushed you to the top. I guess they want to use this method to peacefully take back the authority that is in your hands. Aren't you angry at all about this? Jiang Pingji pouted. What can I do if I'm angry? Do you want to learn from your predecessor and rebel and cause trouble? That was obviously impossible. In order to maintain the current peace of the Federation, Jiang Pingji could sacrifice anything, including herself. The way the Federation dealt with it was considered mild. It was just a scheme. Jiang Pingji really had no need to be angry. In terms of the outcome, the Federation wanted to take back Sky Brain's authority for the sake of stability. But in terms of the process, Jiang Pingji would eventually become the marshal of the Federation with real power. She would still be the beneficiary. Since it was a win-win situation, she would endure the slightest bit of scheming. Sky Brain laughed. You're much more broad-minded than your adoptive parents. Jiang Pingji rested her chin on her hand. Adoptive parents? Sky Brain sneered. A pair of man and woman who have lived for 2,000 years and haven't died. They should have died long ago, yet they keep jumping up and down. Jiang Pingji was speechless. It sounded like there was a lot of resentment. And then? Why do you say they are my adoptive parents? Sky Brain said. Back then, the direct line of descent of the Jiang family suffered a devastating blow. They heard the news and rushed over, but they only had time to save you. They dug you out from the ruins of the machines and raised you for 2 years. But, you were born with the Emperor's fate, and they were outsiders. Raising you for a long time would affect your destiny, so they left you at the entrance of the orphanage. You know what happened next, so I won't explain more. Although it was said to let her live, it also ordered Sky Brain to secretly observe Jiang Pingji's growth progress. Perhaps because she had been paying attention to a child for a long time, Jiang Pingji had some special meaning to Sky Brain. The direct line of descent of the Jiang family who had died probably added up to her weight in Sky Brain. Jiang Pingji held her forehead and sighed. It sounds quite bizarre. She thought she was struggling at the grassroots. She didn't expect to climb to the top and find out that she had the opportunity to take a helicopter. Hehe, holding a useless expired ticket in her hand. She was really F***king crazy. You don't seem very happy. Jiang Pingji rested her chin on her hand and sneered. I have no feelings. Sky Brain. She was indeed a child of the Jiang family. She was cold-hearted, cold-blooded, and rational. They came from the same source and came down from the same production line. Jiang Pingji hesitated for a while and asked, How high is my authority? Sky Brain said, Very high. Excluding your adoptive parents and the marshal who holds the Emperor's head blade, you are the highest. Jiang Pingji rubbed her chin and said, Can I change a person's data? For example, secretly changing one's age or something. Sky Brain. If she used her authority to do such a thing, believe it or not, the ancestors of the Jiang family would come back to life from their graves in anger. No, I'm a Sky Brain with integrity. I can't help the wicked do evil, and help you bully minors. Jiang Pingji. For all, Ngungo, if she couldn't even do that, how could she be considered a dog with authority? Sky Brain said helplessly. Instead of thinking about cheating, it's better to help him adapt to this era. You have to know that if he doesn't pass the intelligence and living ability test, he won't be released even if he's 300 years old, let alone 30 years old. Unless he defected from the Federation and left the Federation to go to another star region, Jiang Pingji wouldn't be able to spare the nanny robot. Jiang Pingji. What the hell was up with these stupid rules? Couldn't they learn to be flexible? With such a mood, Jiang Pingji followed Sky Brain's guidance to the research lab where Wuxia was currently. Opening the door, she saw an ancient inner residence. If it wasn't for the high-tech feeling of the scenery one step away, she would have thought she had traveled through time again. Virtual environment? Sky Brain laughed. To protect the mental state of the child, the nanny robot will try to simulate the environment that the child is most familiar with and at ease. Jiang Pingji. Could these guys not associate words like child and minor with Wuxia? The more she reminded them, the more she felt like she was a beast. Jiang Pingji looked around and finally found a person who seemed to be curled up in a blanket in the corner. 3 steps away stood a round-headed nanny robot. This robot wasn't the common white model, but a very low-profile gold color. The word nouveau riche was written all over its body. Don't come near. The robot stopped Jiang Pingji, but didn't make any further resistance. Jiang Pingji. She didn't mean any harm. Sky Brain sniggered. The nanny robot will detect the emotions of those who approach. Your emotions aren't right. A person with a brain full of useless thoughts couldn't get close to a child. Jiang Pingji definitely didn't have any good thoughts at the moment. Jiang Pingji. She just wanted to hug Wuxia. That was judged as useless thoughts? As she spoke, a head popped out from the blanket, revealing a pair of pure black and bright eyes. The eyes were too clean, so clean that Jiang Pingji felt unfamiliar. But she was sure that deep in the eyes was a soul she was familiar with. When their eyes met, the black-haired youth who was hiding in the corner hesitated for a moment, then suddenly pounced on her and hugged her, burying his head in her neck and shoulder. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Is it really you? The youth's voice was also unfamiliar, perhaps because he hadn't used it for a long time. It sounded hoarse and obscure. Jiang Pingji. She couldn't help but blink. Wuxi's language at the moment was the elegant language of his previous life, not the federal common language. This meant that he had to learn from zero and understand this completely strange and dazzling world bit by bit. Before the age of 30, could he really pass the intelligence and living ability test? Yes, it's me. Jiang Pingji raised her hand and rubbed the back of Wuxi's head. She couldn't help but hug him back. Before she exerted any strength, the robot at the side began to sound a yellow alarm, indicating that she couldn't use more than a certain amount of strength on the child. Jiang Pingji. Damn it, when Wuxia becomes an adult, he'll definitely use more strength than this. Jiang Pingji explained in a few words and told Wuxia that the world he was currently in was her hometown. Wuxi's emotions calmed down, and he was no longer flustered. God knows how panicked he was when he died of old age, and closed his eyes. Instead of going to the underworld, he found himself in a strange white space. He was even stuffed into a strange and young body and soaked in a pink liquid without a stitch of clothing on him. The strange round-headed thing could speak, but he couldn't understand what it said. The people who came in later were dressed strangely, and he couldn't understand what they said either. He never thought that this would be the world from Her Majesty's hometown. Once he accepted this explanation, Wuxia calmed down. He was less afraid of everything around him and more curious. Given that Wuxi's situation was too special, Jiang Pingji applied to the Research Institute for Accelerated Language and Basic Knowledge. To put it simply, it was to instill some commonly used knowledge into his brain. It would take time to completely digest and master it, but it was more efficient and faster than self-study. This technique was targeted at people in a vegetative state who slept for a long time, or special people who were derailed from society for some reason. Of course, not all knowledge could be instilled. The amount of it depended on the surgeon's mental brain. Wuxi's mental strength was abnormally strong, and his innate mental ability was healing, so the absorption would be faster. What is this? Wuxia sat on the strange white chair obediently. He didn't dare to move his body, only turning his eyeballs to look up. His head was covered with a strange semicircular cover. Countless tentacles extended out of the cover, which made him shiver. These tentacles were similar to the tentacle tubes he saw when he woke up from the pink liquid. Jiang Pingji said, "It's a small surgery. Don't worry, I'm here with you." The two of them interlocked their fingers. Because it was Wuxia's permission, the nanny robot squatting at the side did not issue a warning. She could stabilize Wuxia's emotions, so the robot's judgment of her was safe. Jiang Pingji did not lie to Wuxia. The entire transmission process took less than 5 minutes. Wuxia shook his slightly dizzy head. Other than feeling a little sleepy, he did not feel anything else. Jiang Pingji then tried to converse with him in the common language of the Federation. Wuxia understood, but when he subconsciously replied, he used the elegant language from his previous life. After a while he widened his eyes in shock. He actually understood those strange languages? The surgery was very effective, but to completely absorb and master it requires more practice. Wuxia was speechless. He seemed to have inexplicably learned an alien language. He could understand it, but he did not know how to speak it. Or rather, he knew how to pronounce it, but he could not speak it clearly when he opened his mouth. Under such circumstances he could only practice more. There was no other shortcut. So magical? The famous foreign language expert of the Jiang dynasty spent his entire life to master 5 languages, but he learned one in less than half a cup of tea? Jiang Pingji could not help but laugh. There's something even more magical. I'll accompany you to familiarize yourself with it. From a certain perspective, she had been away from the Federation for almost 100 years. She needed some time to revise. Wuxia calmed his nervous and flustered heart and nodded heavily. A month later, Jiang Pingji looked at the brand new intelligence on Wuxia's wrist with satisfaction. As a dog with limited authority, Jiang Pingji got someone to put Wuxia's identity under her household registration, and conveniently made him his guardian. Smiley face, angle. Yes, she Jiang Pingji became Wuxia's guardian and adopter before he became an adult. Today was the day they left the research institute. These days, Wuxia had been learning and mastering basic knowledge, such as how to dress, how to cook, how to order takeout, how to locate himself, how to call the police for help, how to log into the virtual network, and how to understand the price of goods in this era. But then again, Wuxia had a nanny robot to look after him 24/7. Did he still need to learn how to cook and order takeout? Jiang Pingji was somewhat at a loss about this setting. The robot's reply was that Wuxia was recovering well, and he needed to learn to live independently as much as possible before leaving the robot. Smiley face, angle. Whether it was in ancient times or the interstellar era, money was the most important thing. Jiang Pingji let Wuxia connect his account and spend the money in it freely. She was also a rich person. An account that was not worth a few zeros was enough for Wuxia to buy and spend. What surprised her was that Wuxia's original account actually had a considerable amount of savings. She checked the statement and found that other than the recent transfer of $1 million, which was the reward for being a hero, there was a monthly transfer of 30,000 to 40,000 credits. It probably started when Wuxia, who was 212175, was 3 years old. The account that transferred the money was from a research institute. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She suddenly remembered what the marshal had said. Wuxia was not only a subject of observation by the research institute, but he was also a member of the research institute, helping them to earn money. Those words were actually not a lie? The nanny robot's reply also confirmed this. Because he did not have a spiritual consciousness, Wuxia could not freely control the innate spiritual realm, but he could use special methods to guide it and make it work. The research institute needed this kind of power, so Wuxia was classified as a member of the research institute. He received a monthly salary, all kinds of insurance and benefits were complete, and there was a bonus for completing a big project. There was also a New Year's money at the end of the year smiley face, angle, the most amazing operation was, Wuxia's original nanny robot would also use the money as a guarantee. Why is there such a setting? Heavenly Brain said. because we are not sure how long he can work. In order to maintain the quality of life of such special personnel, the federal government allows the nanny robot to help them manage their accounts and carry out guaranteed financial management. However, most of the special personnel's accounts only have the guaranteed relief allocated by the federal government to ensure a normal life. Wuxia is a special case. After so many years of financial management, his savings are quite considerable. Jiang Pingji was speechless. When Wuxia heard about this, he asked if she could continue with the job. "Can I still starve you?" Wuxia said, "But it's rare to have a way to make a living. Naturally, I have to give it a try. I can't be a person who does not work and cannot distinguish between the 5 grains." In the previous 2 lives, he had been an official, received his salary, and had some stable income under his name. In this life, he still did not know how to realize his value, but he definitely could not be a useless person who did not know anything. Jiang Pingji respected Wuxia's choice. She could also see the contradiction and confusion in Wuxia's heart. It was impossible for her to stay by his side for a long time. There was still a lot of backlog in the army. It would be good if Wuxia could find a job and integrate into the new world as much as possible. The previous research institute was very easy to talk to. They helped Wuxia write a letter of recommendation, recommending him to work at the special medical center on the central planet. There were not many people whose mental strength was strong enough to condense a spiritual domain. Wuxia's attribute was the extremely rare healing, so he was popular everywhere. Now that he had self-awareness, it meant that he could control his ability smoothly and freely. His value was even greater. This healing ability not only targeted the injuries of ordinary people, but it could also speed up the healing of mental injuries. Jiang Pingji was speechless. People who were so awesome were like cheats wherever they went. When they arrived on the central planet, Jiang Pingji and Wuxia received a piece of news. This news also made Wuxia feel like he was injected with chicken blood. He absorbed everything in the new world like a sponge, and strived to pass the adulthood test as soon as possible before the age of 30. He was also speechless about this setting. At 30, he was actually still a child. "I knew that the group of old foxes in the federal government liked to fleece sheep. Not only did they catch me to fleece, but they also want to pull a few more sheep with them." This news was very simple, and it also confirmed Jiang Pingji's previous guess. In the first life, Jiang Yan and Wei Tsong were extradited here after ending their journey in that world. However, because of the secret organization regulations of the federal government, they would not have the memories of their previous lives. In layman's terms, it was the soul reincarnating again, but this kind of reincarnation could be controlled by humans. The same soul, 2 lives. "Where's Lian?" Jiang Pingji looked at the notice with a sour expression. Her life hasn't come to an end yet. Because the influence of the former sky brain has disappeared, the flow of time in the 2 dimensions will synchronize. Lian, or will probably need a few more years. Anyway, we'll see each other in the future. But for now, the most important thing is still you. Wuxia pointed at himself blankly. "Me." Jiang Pingji could not help but curl up on the sofa dejectedly. According to the federal law, underage people can't apply for childcare. She spread out her hands and told Wuxia the unfortunate news. In the federal government, it's illegal for a woman to give birth to a child. If an adult male or female of the right age wants a child, they have to apply to the childcare agency. Wuxia was still underage. She did not realize that the 2 of them slept in separate rooms. There was even a nanny robot guarding outside Wuxia's room. Wuxia was speechless. "I can touch you now. I can't do anything below the forehead of an adult." As soon as she finished speaking, the nanny robot sent her another yellow warning. It signaled for Jiang Pingji to restrain the improper thoughts in her mind about Wuxia. Wuxia was speechless. "I'll tear you apart sooner or later." Jiang Pingji angrily threw the pillow at the robot with the round head. The robot said, "Detected that the Guardian has violent emotions and attacked a special robot. Yellow warning once. This month, a total of 12 times. I forgot to mention, yellow warning. This thing cannot be too much. If it is more than 30 times a month, the Guardian cannot be within 10 meters of the child. In serious cases, the Guardian will be deprived of custody." Jiang Pingji was speechless. When will these days come to an end? Genius in a second. Remember this site's address. Mobile version. Chapter 1864. On the virtual network, Central Planet's trending list. Hashtag treasure of the world. National first love hashtag. Such a trending topic quietly hovered at the 100th position, and its popularity was still slowly rising. Clicking on the topic, the first trending topic was a blogger who posted a few candid photos and videos, using the tone of a fanatic to praise his looks. Kaigwa. Now I'm rationally disgusted when I see National XX. Years of separation. Just a few refined photos and you're talking about national first love. Don't you know that my first love is a paper doll? Taoyaozhuozhua. Should I start scolding directly or follow the procedure? After a while, the style of the comments changed again. Laojia Lixiang. But speaking of which, whether it's a 2D photo or a 3D projection, this guy is really good looking. The netizens thought that the handsome guy in the photo was another popular celebrity in the entertainment circle, or a new type of virtual character produced by some paper doll company, trying to gain exposure by being on the trending list. This was an old trick, and they were already used to it. Most of the netizens who clicked on the link got a bunch of photos for free, exclaiming that the photoshopped photos were really good, that the plastic surgery was perfect, and so on. Until a certain internet celebrity with more than 1 billion fans came down. Central Planet's Special Medical Center v. Violation of portrait complaint. The netizens who followed Central Planet's Special Medical Center were dumbfounded. Central Planet's Special Medical Center was a very special medical organization. Usually, they only reposted and did not create original content. The people who followed them were either business tycoons, political tycoons, or military tycoons. The official account looked very relaxed, but in fact it was very powerful. It had been hundreds of years since the account was created, and the owner of the official account had changed time and time again. Currently, the official blogger was quite aloof and never posted original content. Reform Spring Breeze Mandy. Oh my, is this Xiaoyang in real life? Guoli Chung. This is the new blogger's first original post after taking office, right? Huiyuan Taoji. To let the blogger Xiaoyang personally reprimand him, this national first love has a background. Not long after Central Planet's Special Medical Center V posted his complaint, the original blogger's photos were deleted. Of course, there were some clever netizens who had saved the photos. Outstanding looks always left a deep impression on people. Netizens who had been to Central Planet's Special Medical Center recognized the real identity of national first love. Fried String Bug Clan Kakikyo. Isn't this Dr. Wei Ci? The most idiotic netizen. I was slacking off at work and climbed up to have a look. I didn't expect the treasure boy that I've been keeping for so long to be exposed. According to insiders, Dr. Wei Ci was sent here out of nowhere. Airborne. Even in the interstellar era, they didn't have a good impression of members who were parachuted in. Yang Tian Kigeojio. What's wrong with being airborne? In the entire Federation, there were less than 10 healers in the spiritual domain. He was also an innate spirit domain expert, and his strength was estimated to be comparable to a level 5 gene unlocked. Wasn't the central government's official Weibo doing this because they were afraid of being poached? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Based on his confident tone, it was obvious that he was someone in the know. A spiritual domain, a healing spiritual domain that was condensed innately, was highly sought after no matter where he went. There was a commotion online for a while, but it did not blow up. Wei Ci's life was not affected at all, and he still worked from 9 to 5 every day. When the medical center needed him, he would provide assistance. When he was not needed, he would study all kinds of content in his small office and sign up for several ancient literature classes. In this era, learning was convenient. Adults who had entered society could also attend virtual schools. Wei Ci signed up for the elementary class of ancient literature. Usually he had 4 classes, but today he only had 1 class before he hurriedly went offline. Today was a very important day. The Central Planet Nursery Institution sent a message, saying that the babies in the nursery pod were about to be born. Jiang Pingji was busy outside and said that she would only be back in 2 or 3 days. Wuxia could only pick up the babies and bring them home alone. Wuxia had been looking forward to this day since a few months ago. He had done enough strategies, from the transportation to the registration queue at the Central Planet Nursery Institution, to where to apply for a birth certificate for the newborns, to receive a smart chip, to matching a family nanny robot. Even though he had memorized these contents by heart, he was still so nervous that his forehead was sweating when he actually did it. Then he realized that he was thinking too much. Smiley face, angle, Her Majesty was the commander of the Federal Army. As a family member of a military marriage, Wuxia could go through the green channel to complete the formalities. Thank you. Wuxia smiled and thanked the robot cylinder that was not even as tall as his waist. The robot said, "You're welcome." With the robot leading the way, Wuxia completed the formalities very smoothly. He received the child's birth certificate, smart chip, and an electronic account. He chose a name, Jiangyan. Seeing the 2 words being recorded in the family account, the corners of Wuxia's lips curled up. After a busy afternoon, Wuxia took a pile of documents and certificates to the nursery window to pick up the baby. Please verify the paternity DNA sequence code. A familiar-looking robot with a round head rolled its wheels over. Wuxia followed the instructions and placed his finger on the cover that it extended out. His fingertip hurt slightly and a bead of blood emerged. After about 3 seconds, the robot with a round head said, "Verification successful. He is indeed Jiangyan's father." Wuxia asked warmly, "Where's the child?" The robot turned its head, and its abdomen became transparent from the flowing gold metal, revealing the white and chubby baby lying inside. It turned out that the robot's abdomen was hollow. The robot's abdomen was padded with a soft cushion. The baby could sleep inside. Wuxia asked it, "Can I hold the child?" The robot said, "Newborns have low immunity. It is not recommended to hold the child in public." Wuxia reluctantly looked at the child's eyebrows and said softly, "Then let's go home." The robot replied, "Okay." Wuxia looked at the robot worriedly. Although he knew that this was a family nanny robot specially designed for children, he was still worried about the child's safety. Would it be bumpy lying down like this? The robot's abdomen didn't look big. Would Yenner feel crowded? How was her breathing? Before going back, the robot suggested that Wuxia go to the supermarket to buy milk powder and clothes for the child. During this period, the baby cried once. Wuxia saw 4 lifelike hands emerge from the belly of the robot. 2 hands were used to change the baby's urine into a paper diaper. 1 hand was holding a milk bottle to feed the baby, and the other hand was used to throw the changed diaper into another small compartment to dissolve it into trash. When changing the diaper, Wuxia saw that the robot even had a mosaic of the child's body. Smiley face, angle. The robot said, "Federal citizens have the right to privacy. Even if she has just left the nursery for less than half a day, it's the same." The key parts could not be exposed to the light of day without permission. Wuxia was speechless. The robot quickly changed the diaper, fed the baby, and skillfully held the baby and burped. Only when Yenner let out a small sound did the robot put the baby down. Wuxia was speechless. He couldn't help at all. Smiley face, angle. The only thing he could do was swipe his card to buy things. He didn't need to carry things on the way back, because the supermarket would have a special express delivery. When they arrived at their destination, the things were delivered. It's really a convenient world that I couldn't imagine before. Every aspect of life was so comprehensive that he couldn't imagine it. For example, other than residents and authorized robots, outsiders and robots couldn't get close to the living area. Wuxia wanted to bring the robot and the baby back, so he had to go to the property management department to register. Opening the door, Wuxia saw a pair of slippers at the entrance. "Pung, you're back?" I rushed back at top speed. "Are you touched, Zixiao?" Jiang Pingji hugged him. Her voice sounded a little tired. She originally wanted to bring Yenner home with Wuxia to give him a surprise, but they were still half a day late. The family robot determined that the environment was safe, and the air was up to standard. Only then did it open the door of the protective cabin, revealing the baby inside. "That's great. Yenner is back with us again." Jiang Pingji carried the baby out. The robot took the initiative to drag in the shopping items and tidy them up. Wuxia said, "When Songer and Lianer come back, it'll be a real family reunion." Jiang Pingji smiled and poked the baby's little face. "There's still a wait." Wuxia said, "There's always hope. It's only 3 to 5 years. We can afford to wait." There was no longer the involuntary and mutual deceit of the past. He only hoped that they could get what they wanted in the end and live up to their original intentions. Chapter 1865. As an antique, Wuxia had recently become obsessed with the virtual internet. He opened an account for himself and shared bits and pieces of his daughter's life on it every day. Occasionally he would share his calligraphy and paintings. Regardless of the weather, he recorded from his daughter Jiang Yan's 1-month-old birthday until she was about to go to school. Many netizens who seemed to be annoyed also developed a daily routine of watching him raise his daughter. Relying on his good calligraphy and good classical painting skills, Wuxia also became a famous figure in the circle. He did not have a team to manage fans for him, nor did he organize activities like lucky draws to increase his fans. After a few years, he inexplicably became a small blogger with tens of millions of fans, and these tens of millions of fans were active fans. Half of them shouted, "Prince Charming, you are so classical and elegant. I want to go with you to the parenting registry to get a little monkey." The other half shouted and asked him, "Father-in-law, does your baby still lack a son-in-law/daughter-in-law who has gone to an advanced college and an annual salary of $1 million? Other than working at the special medical center on the central planet, he would also take on commercial calligraphy and paintings when he had nothing to do, such as inscribing words, writing couplets, or painting. Needless to say, after a few years of accumulation, the money he earned from his calligraphy and paintings had actually saved up a large sum of money. As a famous figure in the circle and a rare antique figure, Wuxia's calligraphy was valued in the tens of thousands, and the price of his paintings also started from that. "I always feel that I'm being overcharged." Wuxia did not understand commercial calligraphy and paintings when he first took on them, so he mentioned it during the daily video call with Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji turned around and sent someone to check the market price. She set a price for him that was higher than a newcomer's, but slightly lower than the standards of a god. Wuxia felt that the price was too high at one glance. He was not a famous artist, and his calligraphy and paintings had no collectible value. Wouldn't the customers scold him if he set such a high price? Jiang Pingji said, "It's worth this money. If they want to buy it, then buy it. If not, then forget it." Zixiao's hands are precious. The husband and wife could talk every day and hug each other at close range through the virtual network, but they still spent more time apart. Jiang Pingji was busy outside. She was either on the way to war, patrolling, or conducting military exercises to intimidate the borders. The way the war was an eye-opener for Wuxia. At the same time, he knew that the danger was incomparable to his previous life. He wanted to help, but he also knew that he did not have the military foundation of this era. He could only work hard to take care of himself and his daughter, so that His Majesty would not have any worries. Fortunately, there weren't many major battles left. There were only some remnant soldiers who were stubbornly resisting and struggling at death's door. As the leader of the First War Corps, Jiang Pingji was bound to be at the front line, but it was unlikely that she would be personally involved. Her safety was still guaranteed. Wuxia did not often accept commercial calligraphy and paintings. Most of the time, he amused himself by drawing all kinds of faceless women smiley face, angle, he did not dare to draw the face, for fear that the identity of the person in the painting would be recognized, which would then bring danger to himself and his child. In order to conceal his true purpose, he would also mix in a lot of other content. There were both ancient and modern people in the paintings. There was a dragon robe that represented the emperor, and there were also commoners wearing short clothes. There was a special military uniform that represented the leader of an army, and there was also a casual dress with a shirt and a short skirt. The content of the paintings did not have a fixed theme. Her fans jokingly called her Mrs. Big Tentacle, who relied on her conscience to generate electricity. Wuxia. At first he was annoyed by the feminine nickname Madam, but later he realized that it meant big. Underscore smiley face. Angle. Underscore the people of this era were quite interesting. Daddy. Wuxia had just put away the brush and tidied up the messy desk when the door to the room opened automatically. A fair and plump girl walked in. Wuxia's mood jumped a lot when he heard this form of address. Although it was not the first time the child had called him daddy, every daddy made him feel satisfied and happy. In his previous 2 lives, because of his identity and the situation, Wuxia could only respectfully maintain a distance between him and his own flesh and blood. Fortunately, the heavens took pity on him and he could actually live another life, completely making up for his previous regrets. Yen was holding 2 exercise books made of imitation paper and a small pen in her little hand. She looked up at him seriously and said, "Daddy, I finished my homework." Her pair of watery eyes were like the freshest, most moist black grapes, and her gaze could melt a person. She looked forward to Wuxia's commendation and praise, and Wuxia was not stingy. He lifted her up high. The family nanny robots of this era were too powerful. They could take care of the children when they could only lie down. They could take care of the children when they started to turn over and crawl. When the children learned to walk, they could still be busy and considerate. Even when the children were just learning to speak, they would guide the children to speak. When Jiang Yan was 1 year old, the robot said that she could start early education. Wuxia was eager to show off his talents, but the robot took care of everything. Wuxia was speechless. The only thing that was gratifying was that Jiang Yan liked him even more. Every day, she seriously completed the learning content that the robot arranged for her. She would also look for him to hug and praise and learn the 4 arts from him. The robot was not equipped with these skills, so naturally, it could not compete with Wuxia. "This is Mommy." Jiang Yan nestled in Wuxia's arms and looked at the painting that had just been drawn on the table without blinking. She raised her hand and pointed at the woman in the painting. She said clearly, "When will Mommy come back?" Wuxia stroked her hair and smiled. "Not for the time being." Jiang Yan was a little disappointed, but she still asked seriously, "Is it because you have to protect Yan and the other babies?" Wuxia never avoided the fact that Jiang Pingji could not accompany the children for a long time. He also would not lie to the children and tell them that their mother could come back. To the children, a white lie was deception. It might be more hurtful than telling them the truth directly. Yes, Mommy is a hero. Not only does Hero have to protect our Yan, but he also has to protect more babies of Yan's age. Jiang Yan was young, but she knew that the hero was a very impressive person. It was just that she really missed her mother. That was why she begged Wuxia to draw a picture of a family of 3 with her today. Wuxia looked at his daughter's painting and proudly showed it off to the netizens. "Ayo hey. Looking at my wife's diary, I want babies every day. It's great to raise a daughter." It was important to know that young people in this era rarely took the initiative to have children. However, looking at Wuxia's daily life, it could be said that there were thousands of young fans who joined the army of raising children. It could be considered as a small contribution to the growth of the federal population. I soar back. QEQ, my wife is really cute. Her painting skills are like her father's. She will also be famous in the future. Reform spring breeze blows Mandy. Speaking of which, there's something very strange. My wife has never talked about her partner, but the baby's mother is always present when he draws. It makes one wonder if there's a conflict between the wife and her partner? Pinching a lotus flower Xiao Hongqian. What's there to be suspicious about? How can there be a proper marriage these days? Don't everyone go to a nursery to get a child? For adults, the child is their own child. However, if the child's other half wants to raise the child together, no one can stop them. Therefore, it's very normal for adults not to mention the child's other relative, but the child will always talk about his parents. Wuxia looked at the comment, thought about it, and silently left a sentence. Wuxia. No, I have a very good relationship with my wife. It's just that her job is special. I want to reduce her exposure on the public platform as much as possible. She's not a public figure, and it's not suitable for her to appear in front of so many netizens. Maybe there will be a chance in the future to introduce her to you. Many netizens were stuffed with dog food by Wuxia, and they couldn't help but cheer. However, they waited and waited. Wuxia became a doctor at the Central Planet's Special Medical Center, a master of classical calligraphy and painting, and a professor of classical literature. The diaries of the second and third children had been serialized for almost 20 years, but the netizens didn't know who the rumored partner was. Many years later, these fans almost forgot about this. One day, Wuxia's diary turned into two hands with their fingers intertwined. The gemstone rings on their ring fingers sparkled, and there were two federally issued marriage certificates next to them. Wuxia V. Hello, she's my wife, Federal Marshal Jiang. Federal Marshal Jiang V. Yes, let me introduce him to you. He's my wife, Wuxia. 7th Army Jiang Yan V. Let me introduce him to you. Federal Marshal Jiang Wuxia. These two are my parents. Fresh graduate Wei Tsong V. Let me introduce him to you. Federal Marshal Jiang Wuxia. These two are my parents. Jiang Lian V. Let me introduce him to you. Federal Marshal Jiang Wuxia. These two are my parents. Federal citizens. #shocking. The parents only cared about showing off their love in public, but the three children were abandoned? #genius. 1 second to remember this website's address. Mobile version M. Chapter 1866. In September, the chrysanthemum crab was fat. Sure enough, the crabs are the fattest in this season. There was a popular food street near Tianhua University. There were all kinds of food stalls on both sides of the street. It was a lively scene every day. The crab dishes here were famous both at home and abroad. Every year, countless people would come here to taste them. In addition to the unique taste of the crab dishes, there was also a historical reason. It was said that the crab dishes here were developed with the help of the famous historical figure Yang Si. The taste was the most authentic. Perhaps because of these reasons, the people in this city had the habit of eating crabs in September. Although Gu Min was not a food lover, she applied to Tianhua University, so the food street had a certain status. Eat less. Crabs are cold. Aren't you afraid of getting sick? No matter how delicious it is, you can't eat too much. Moderation is the best. Sai Chen, are you worried about money? Gu Min pretended to be sad. Her eyes glued to the plate and refused to move away. If I'm worried about money, why would I treat you? Jiang Chen skillfully shaved the crab meat and said helplessly, I'm worried that you'll eat too much and get sick again. You heartless little thing. If I knew you were thinking this way, I wouldn't have brought you here. I'm sad. Chen, don't be angry. I was wrong. I won't do it again. Gu Min could not help but put her palms together and beg for mercy until Jiang Chen showed a helpless smile. She changed the topic. Chen, have you lived here for a long time? How can you find such a small and remote shop? Jiang Chen said. Not long, but there is a food lover at home. He goes to many places, so of course I know. Gu Min asked siblings. Jiang Chen shook her head. No, the food lover is my father. This food shop was discovered by Jiang Chen's father when he was young. At that time, business was very good. However, with the development of the times, people's pace of life was getting faster and faster. This kind of business encountered difficulties. The shop owner's son felt that there was no future in being a chef. There was no one to inherit the old man's skills. Guests, the dishes are here. This shop was not only remote, but also very small. The shop owner was the waitress, the chef, and the boss. The shop owner was old, and could not be as busy as when he was young. There were limited customers every day. He wanted to close early today, but he did not expect Jiang Chen to bring Gu Min to eat. So the shop owner made a crab feast. Jiang Chen thanked him in a low voice. The shop owner showed a look of fear and trepidation. Gu Min revealed a doubtful expression. Chen, is it an illusion? Grandpa's store seems to be afraid of you? I can't say I'm afraid, I should say I respect you. Jiang Chen's expression was calm as she said. I saw wrongly. The old man just looks stern. The shop owner who had just walked to the door. No one knew that the grandfather of the owner of this restaurant used to be an imperial chef who was in charge of the empress's meals. However, it didn't take long for the empress to establish a constitution, which reduced the number of people in the palace even further. The shop owner grandpa then started his own business. After a few decades, a young man brought the then crown prince out of the palace for a stroll. He came across this small restaurant again, and tasted the dishes of the palace. Only after learning about the history of this restaurant, did he understand the origins of this place. Jiang Chen had come here twice with her parents when she was young, so the owner knew who she was. Even though he had lost the right to control the life and death of the country, he still retained his dignity. Ordinary people were still very respectful of the crown prince. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Jiang Chen happily paid the bill. Are you feeling much better now? Gu Min had made a fool of herself in class and cried when she came back. Jiang Chen couldn't stand it anymore, so she invited her to dinner. There was no sorrow that a good meal couldn't solve. If there was, then 2 meals would do. Gu Min said embarrassedly, I'm much better now. Jiang Chen said, you can change your major after a while. Gu Min's college entrance examination scores weren't low, but Tianhua University was one of the top institutions of higher learning in the country. The admission requirements were so high that it made people feel hopeless. Because her scores weren't high enough for her preferred major, Gu Min could only comply with the adjustment and enter Tianhua University's history department. Gu Min wasn't cut out for history. Her understanding of history was limited to a variety of television dramas, and she often misremembered names and events. The joke of the day was that Gu Min had falsely attributed 2 famous historical events to someone else. Gu Min scratched her head and said reluctantly, if I change my major, will I not be able to stay in the same dormitory as you? Jiang Chen asked her, are you going to give up on changing your major just to stay in the same dormitory as me? It's not like I can't. My major in university won't affect my future work. Gu Min sighed and muttered, my mom's martial arts school, my dad's paper company, my grandparents' huge collection of antiques. Anyway, after graduation, I'll go back to inherit the family business. Choosing a major in university won't affect my future work. If that's the case, staying in the history department is actually quite good. Actually, my future work intention is to be a scriptwriter. If I want to be a scriptwriter, I need to have some knowledge. After saying a lot, Gu Min asked Jiang Chen, Chen, what do you plan to do in the future? Jiang Chen said, open an entertainment company. Open an entertainment company? Why? To promote my brother, Jiang Chen said. If I don't work hard to make him famous, he can only go back to inherit the family business. My future career was decided when I was born, but he can still do what he likes. If he likes acting, then he can do it. Gu Min was speechless. It sounded inexplicably desolate. Chen is a good sister. I think so too, Jiang Chen said. But I don't approve of him going to that kind of place. The entertainment industry isn't clean. In order to fight for this opportunity, his mother and father almost broke his legs when he was young, but he was too stubborn. He said that even if his legs were broken, he would still crawl over. Listen to what he's saying. He's so stubborn, so I can only let him be. Gu Min said, from what you said, Chen's family is more conservative. When Jiang Chen mentioned his parents, he always used father and mother, and never used the more colloquial father and mother. They are indeed quite conservative. That's why my brother said he wanted to be an actor. And that's why he was beaten up so badly. Even if he won the title of the youngest best actor, and had the potential to win a Grand Slam, it was still very embarrassing for the royal family to produce an actor. After 100 years, he might even be beaten up by his ancestors. Gu Min smiled and said, when I go back, I'm going to find out which handsome young man with the surname Jiang in the entertainment industry and add him as a fan. Everyone in the family is against him becoming an actor, and there are many arguments about this. Jiang Chen sighed. His surname isn't Jiang. He took my father's surname. That kid went from child star to best actor without using any of his family's connections. He would probably have to wait until he reappeared in the public eye as a prince of the royal family before everyone would know his true identity. I'm very curious. Since Chen's family is so conservative, why would your brother want to be an actor? Jiang Chen said, the more my mother is against something, the more tempted he is. Every time, he's on the verge of breaking his leg. After all these years, he didn't break his leg. It was probably because the spirits of his ancestors in heaven were protecting him. Gu Min and this roommate of hers had a very good relationship. The two of them would always go shopping together during the holidays. The only way to solve my worries is to get rich quickly. Looking at her rapidly shrinking wallet, Gu Min looked at the big and small bags that she had bought on impulse, and revealed a melancholic expression. Jiang Chen held a cup of milk tea and said with a smile, "It's okay. I'll support you in the cafeteria for the rest of the month." Tianhua University's cafeteria was considered good and cheap. Students could eat their fill with just 10 yuan or so. If they wanted to eat better, a meal would cost about 40 to 50 yuan. If they wanted to eat individual stir-fried dishes, a meal of 4 dishes would cost more than 100 yuan. Many students would only be extravagant at birthday parties. Gu Min said, "Don't. I'm a big eater. Aren't you afraid that I'll eat you poor?" Jiang Chen drank the rest of the milk tea in one breath, and threw the empty bottle into the trash can 2 meters away. "If you can eat me poor, I'm afraid you'll have to be a glutton." Gu Min silently applauded her friend. Society. Does a tycoon's thigh need a pendant? Baby, hang it wherever you point. Seeing Gu Min's cheeky expression, Jiang Chen could not help but smile. "You're taking advantage of me and you're still pretending. You should reflect on yourself. Don't be a starlight person every month and spend a month's worth of living expenses in a week." Gu Min said gloomily, Buying and buying is the happiest thing in life. If I don't even have this little fun, what's the point of living? Baby's biggest wish is to start a business and become a tycoon. In the future, I'll drink 1 cup of milk tea and throw the other one away." Jiang Chen was amused. "You just said a while ago that you wanted to be a scriptwriter." Gu Min retorted, "There's no conflict between being a scriptwriter and a business tycoon. If I write a popular script and film it into a TV series, I'll be rich in the future. Won't I be a tycoon then? Even a salted fish has a dream. Chen, don't be cruel and burst my dream." Jiang Chen was about to say something when she heard some noise from the wireless earphones on her ears. Her expression darkened a little. "What's wrong?" Gu Min packed up the big and small bags. She did not feel anything when she bought them, but now she wished she had 3 heads and 6 arms. Jiang Chen quietly glanced in a certain direction from the corner of her eyes. She did not see anyone suspicious. "Nothing. My legs suddenly went numb. It's a little uncomfortable." Gu Min put down the bags and let Jiang Chen sit on the public bench. "Come, give me your legs. I'll massage them for you. It's an ancestral massage technique. I guarantee you'll feel better in a while." Gu Min's mother's martial arts school was also inherited from her grandparents. There were often conflicts. When Gu Min was young, she had suffered a lot in practicing martial arts. After so many years of stumbling, she slowly mastered the art of brewing medicinal wine and massaging. Jiang Chen smiled faintly, but there was some doubt in her heart. Ever since she and Gu Min became roommates, Jiang Chen's secret guard reported that the two of them were often monitored. However, the person's whereabouts were extremely secretive. Even if the secret guard fought with him, it would not be easy. At first, Jiang Chen thought that the person was after her. After all, she was the heir to the royal family and the future young empress. It was hard to guarantee that there would be people with more extreme political leanings who would attack her. However, after the secret guard probed and investigated, he was shocked to find that the person was after Gu Min. Jiang Chen secretly became suspicious. She sent people to investigate Gu Min since she was young, but nothing unusual was found. The person who followed Gu Min was also very strange. He did not have any intention of harming her. Instead, he seemed to be a Miss Tian Luo. There was one time when Gu Min had stomach problems. Jiang Chen had classes in the afternoon. When she returned, Gu Min thanked her for ordering stomach medicine and lunch. At the beginning of the month, Gu Min's period came. It was only when she went to class that she realized something was wrong. When she went to the toilet, she found that there was an extra pack of soft little angels in her school bag. Because it was Jiang Chen's favorite brand, Gu Min thought that it was Jiang Chen who prepared it. There were some things that Jiang Chen had done, but there were some things that Miss Tian Luo had framed her. Min, I want to ask you something." Jiang Chen felt very comfortable in her calves. She was even more curious. Gu Min's family background was very good. Her ancestors were also small officials. Other than that, there was nothing special about her. Why would that mysterious Miss Tianluo have her eyes on her? This matter had to be clarified. Only by knowing the real purpose of this Miss Tianluo could she be at ease. Chun Chun asked away. Are your legs still numb? It's okay. They're much better. Jiang Chen probed. Have you noticed that there's something strange around you? For example, are there any familiar people who are always wandering around? To be honest, I've seen them a few times, but they're very elusive. It doesn't seem very safe. A strange place and familiar people? I don't think so. Gu Min thought carefully and said uncertainly. If you really want to talk about strange things, there should be one. When I was young, I went to a kindergarten for the rich. The parents of the children there were very well off. One time, there was a kidnapping case. I was accidentally injured and taken away. The next day, the kidnappers died on the rooftop. I don't know who did it. Jiang Chen also found out about this kidnapping case. Because the police couldn't find any clues, they could only close the case in a hurry. Until today, they still didn't know who killed the kidnappers. But after calculating the time, Jiang Chen felt that this person shouldn't be Miss Tianluo. According to the investigation of the hidden guards, Miss Tianluo was a skinny man who was about 1.85 meters tall. According to the skin condition of his palm that was exposed during the fight, he should be between 20 to 35 years old. At this age, it was impossible for him to be the person who killed the kidnappers. Other than that, is there anything else? Gu Min pretended to be resentful. I'm just an ordinary civilian. How could I have encountered anything special? Tianhua University was the top university in the country. Even first-year students were very busy with their studies. Unknowingly, a spring and autumn had passed. In the second year of university, a very young professor was transferred to the history department. This person's name was very strange. His surname was Liu, and his name was Shi. When he introduced his name to the students in the lecture hall, many students covered their mouths and snickered. Why was that? The second year of university focused on the history of the Five Kingdoms and the early days of the Jiang dynasty. Who was Liu Shi? He was the famous father of Emperor Chen in official history. Although Emperor Chen didn't approve of him, Cheng Cheng, who recorded history, did. Who was Cheng Cheng? He specialized in compiling the history of the 16 kingdoms, the Xia dynasty, and the Jiang dynasty. He spent 35 years restoring countless ancient books. He was the imperial scribe, and after his death he was conferred the title of first scribe. Cheng Cheng recorded history like this, but Emperor Qin didn't reprimand him. It was obvious that he had tacitly approved of this part. Even though there were many unofficial histories, the official history that students saw was still Liu Shi, courtesy name Zhongqing, the father of Emperor Qin. He lived in Hejian. He was dissolute when he was young, and he was a playboy. Even the father of Emperor Qin, Cheng Cheng, was not polite about Liu Shi. Every word he said was a scumbag. Almost all students who studied history knew him. Liu Shi was a piece of trash, but he had a daughter who changed the world. Because he had the same name, Professor Liu Shi was secretly called a scumbag by the students. Liu Shi was very young. He looked like he was in his late 20s. He was gentle, good-looking, and had a refined and outstanding temperament. The students gave him the nickname Scumbag, but Liu Shi wasn't a scumbag. On the contrary, he kept his chastity and wouldn't easily be alone with female students. If a female student pursued him, he would reject them without hesitation. I'm sorry, I already have a sweetheart. I'm planning to get married next year, but I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Many girls' hearts were broken by this answer. Many girls could only wish Liu Shi and his fiancée a lifetime of happiness with tears. It was strange. Although Liu Shi always said he had a sweetheart, none of the students had ever seen the girl visit Liu Shi. It was Liu Shi's class that day. As the most handsome student in the history department, many students came because of his reputation. The lecture hall was full. However, not all students would be seduced by his beauty. Gu Min was one of them. She was sealed by the quilt in the dormitory and didn't want to go to class, so she asked Jiang Chen to sign in. She didn't expect Liu Shi to find out. Liu Shi smiled and asked Jiang Chen to pass the message. It's not good to skip class. Please ask Gu Min to explain after class. If she's sick, please ask her to bring the doctor's certificate. In order not to deduct her credits at the end of the term, Gu Min could only bite the bullet and talk to Lu Shi to see if he could make an exception. Lu Shi looked very serious when he was angry, and Gu Min was most afraid of this kind of person. Lu Shi, as a professor, couldn't be too harsh when a student came to ask for mercy, but he still gave Gu Min an ultimatum. If you promise not to be absent from class from now until the end of the term, I can consider forgiving you for skipping class. Gu Min wanted to say something, but stopped. She could only agree with a bitter face and repeatedly promised that she wouldn't skip class again. Professor Lu, I know I was wrong. I won't do it again. Gu Min wished she could point 3 fingers at the sky and swear. Lu Shi smiled meaningfully. I believe that Gu Min has a heart of repentance. I believe that you won't let me down. Gu Min nodded quickly. From now on, turn over a new leaf. Study hard and make progress every day. Gu Min assured Lu Shi. As soon as she stepped out of the office, her shoulders drooped and she looked listless. Back in the dormitory, Jiang Chen saw Gu Min's lifeless face. I've already signed in for you, but Professor Lu Shi seems to know you. He saw whether you came or not. Jiang Chen deeply sympathized with her. It wasn't that she didn't want to help her roommate. It was just that her roommate was unlucky to meet a serious professor like Lu Shi. Which university student hadn't skipped class or skipped school? Even Tianhua University's students were the same. Gu Min's mouth twitched. I don't think so. I didn't say hello to him. The girl next door also skipped class. She's fine. Jiang Chen shrugged. She didn't know how Lu Shi noticed. The lecture hall was very big. Usually it could accommodate 200 students. University was different from middle school and high school. The contact between teachers and students was limited to short class interactions. As a professor, it was impossible for Lu Shi to remember every student's face and name. How did he find out? For the sake of your credits and final grades, you should be more careful. You can't skip Lu Shi's class. Gu Min looked sad. Is it too late to change my major? Jiang Chen smiled. It's too late. During the second class, she and Jiang Chen finally understood why Lu Shi remembered Gu Min. Lu Shi talked about the topic of his recent research. It was about the mystery of the identity of Emperor Chen's mother. Historians believed that it was Gu Zhen, but Lu Shi believed that it was not Gu Zhen, but someone else. In order to support this point of view, Lu Shi found a lot of materials. Jiang Chen, as the heir to the royal family, was stunned. Nonsense. He's just playing to the gallery, Gu Min muttered. Who else could it be if it wasn't Gu Zhen? He actually guessed that it was Gu Zhen's elder sister? Because of Emperor Chen, there were only a few records of her blood relatives, regardless of whether they were male or female. Later generations could only peek through history books. Jiang Chen coughed softly and muttered to herself. It might not be nonsense. This content was history to outsiders, but to Jiang Chen, it was a family tree. She had to memorize it when she was very young. Of course, Jiang Chen had learned about the mystery of Emperor Chen's mother from the books left behind by her ancestors. After all, this period of history was too disgraceful. They could not possibly say that Lu Shi had defiled Gu Min, who was born with dementia, and that Gu Zhen had married Lu Shi with the fetus in Gu Min's womb. She was an ancestor after all. She had to keep the last layer of cover. When they heard Lu Shi prove the name of Emperor Chen's mother, a few of her classmates looked at Gu Min strangely. Gu Min couldn't help but explode. Why are you looking at me? It's just the same name. Lu Shi is also a famous scumbag in history. Why don't you go and see him? Jiang Chen held back her laughter. It's probably because of this that Professor Lu Shi pays more attention to you. Knowing that there was a student named Gu Min in his class, Lu Shi would definitely pay attention to her. Naturally, he would know that Gu Min had skipped class. Gu Min rested her chin on her hand and complained. I'm so unlucky. Chen Chen, how dare you laugh at me? Don't you love me anymore? Jiang Chen laughed. Why would I? I've always loved you the most. Gu Min blew a kiss at her. She said playfully. Chen Chen is indeed true love. Mwax. Jiang Chen couldn't help but laugh. She copied her action and blew a kiss. Mwax. Little did they know that the young professor at the podium saw the interaction between the two of them. The chalk in his hand was crushed into several pieces. Jiang Pingji's descendants, They were indeed of the same bloodline. An eyesore. Jiang Chen seemed to feel something. She glanced at the podium and found that Lu Shi was lecturing with a smile on his face. There was no flaw in his act. Gu Min had been targeted by Lu Shi. She couldn't skip class, and he liked to ask her to speak in class. For the sake of credits, Gu Min could only grit her teeth and go back to the dorm to curse Lu Shi. If it weren't for Chen Chun, I would definitely change my major and stay away from Lu Shi. Gu Min's acting was poor. She hung half of her body on Jiang Chen. She did everything she could to act cute, which made Lu Shi even more upset. How old are you? Why are you still calling me a baby? Gu Min looked heartbroken. Didn't we agree to be each other's babies? You think I'm old now, don't you? Jiang Chen sighed. She couldn't do anything to the mischievous Gu Min. Many college students were night owls. Gu Min and Jiang Chen were typical examples. However, the former was addicted to TV shows and had a profound cultivation ability. The latter was always holding a super thick book and reading late into the night. Gu Min had always teased herself. She said that it was easy to become immortal if one was too powerful. She always used this to persuade Jiang Chen to sleep early and wake up early. In the end, Jiang Chen didn't ascend, but she did. Please remember this book's domain name. Jiutian Shenhuang Mobile Version Website. Chapter 1867. As a famous noble clan in Langia County, the Gu clan had many members and many famous scholars. They were very famous in the royal court. This was the Gu clan in the eyes of outsiders. However, the Gu clan in Gu Min's eyes was different. The etiquette was complicated, and the atmosphere was heavy. Everything was so heavy that one could not breathe. Everyone in the Gu residence knew that the First Lady had caught a cold after falling into the water. She had just returned from the gates of hell, after much difficulty. However, after she woke up, her temperament had changed drastically. The old master and madam suspected that some evil spirit had gotten close to the First Lady, and secretly invited a few esteemed monks to take a look. In the end, they were told that the First Lady's lost soul had returned. Perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. Now her mind was much more mature than other children her age. Indeed, everyone in Langia County knew that the eldest daughter of the Gu clan's first wife was a fool. If she had not been born in a noble clan, she would have been abandoned long ago. If the clan did not have some spare cash, how could they afford to raise a girl with a lost soul? First Lady, don't ever go near the pool again. If anything happens, this servant will be punished. When the maidservant saw Gu Min sneaking closer to the pool again, she was so frightened that she turned pale. She wished that she could kneel beside Gu Min and beg her. Gu Min retracted her leg in embarrassment. Her childish face, which was faintly tinged with green, revealed some reluctance. Never mind. Get up. I won't go near it. Only then did the maidservant get up. Afraid that Gu Min would regret it, she led her away from the pool in the courtyard. As Gu Min walked, she turned her head and saw some tools beside the pool. When she thought about what she heard in the morning, she felt confused. Anu, I just heard someone say that father and mother are going to send people to fill up the pool? After filling up the pool, she really did not know how to go back. With this thought, the confusion in Gu Min's eyes deepened. A few days ago, Gu Min cultivated until 3 in the morning before sleeping. As she felt sleepy, she vaguely felt a sharp pain in her chest. When she woke up, she discovered that she was no longer in a university dormitory. Instead, she was in an ancient lady's chamber. A group of unfamiliar women surrounded her, chattering like there were tens of thousands of ducks. Gu Min felt very strange. One moment, she felt cold like she had fallen into an ice cave. The next moment, she felt hot like she was being roasted on a grill. Soon she fainted again. When he woke up again, he was still in that strange room. She was shocked to find that she had turned into a 5 or 6-year-old girl. When she opened her mouth to speak, not only was the maid serving the little girl not pleasantly surprised, she even screamed and staggered away to call for help. Later, he found out that the girl was mentally retarded. She couldn't speak or recognize people. She could only drool and couldn't control her bowels and urine. Gu Min was very worried that she would be regarded as a demon and burned to death. Fortunately, the eminent monks she invited all said that she was a lost soul that had returned and was not possessed by a demon. The girl's parents also accepted the monk's explanation, and they loved Gu Min even more. For the sake of her own life, Gu Min could only swallow her words and explain herself. She stayed quiet for 2 days. After she recovered from the cold, she was allowed to move around in a small area. Her parents, relatives, and friends were all 300 years in the future. Gu Min was like a lonely soul in this strange era. She tried to find a way back, and from time to time, she would sneak into the pond where the girl had fallen into the water to take a look. The maid discovered her intentions and was afraid that something would happen to her again, so she could only keep an eye on her at all times. However, if Gu Min wanted to find a chance, how could these maids stop her? On the 7th night of her transmigration, Gu Min secretly jumped into the pond. The movement of falling into the water attracted the servants who were patrolling the night watch, and she was fished out again. "My daughter, how could you be so cruel to leave your parents?" Gu Min stared blankly at the strange woman, and suddenly felt a little ashamed. No matter what, she had occupied the body of the woman's daughter, and even used this body to commit self-harm. It was indeed wrong. But she wanted to go home. She missed her parents, grandparents, and Chin. She missed the university, the dormitory, and the annoying classes. Gu Min had always been optimistic, but at this moment, she couldn't help but cry, and big tears dripped from her eyes. "I want to go home, I miss home." Mother Gu also cried uncontrollably. "My daughter, your parents are here, and your home is here. Where do you want to go?" Although this daughter was mentally retarded, Mother Gu never despised her. She spent energy and effort on her, and she loved her very much. Finally, the lost soul came back, and her daughter became normal again, but she still wanted to go home and leave them. Hearing this, Gu Min cried even harder. She remembered clearly that when she fell asleep, she felt a faint pain in her chest, and she felt weak all over. She probably died suddenly from staying up late. This meant that even if she found a way to go back, she probably wouldn't be able to. After crying for more than 2 hours, Gu Min nestled in Mother Gu's arms and fell into a deep sleep. When she woke up the next day, her nose was blocked, and her throat was hoarse. Even though she had given up, it still took her half a month to accept reality. Gu Min carefully tested the maid who served the girl, and used her limited historical knowledge to speculate about the dynasty she was in. The result was surprising. She had transmigrated to more than 300 years ago, and there were still 30 to 40 years before the chaos of the 5 kingdoms. Why is it this dynasty? Gu Min's little face scrunched up. Even if it was 30 to 40 years later, it would be fine. If she was in the same era as Emperor Chun, Gu Min would be more balanced, or if she transmigrated to the dynasty under Emperor Qin, and it happened to be before the chaos of the 5 kingdoms. Even if Gu Min didn't have a good record in history, she knew how terrible this period was for women. Women were like goods. No matter how high their social status was, they were just goods of a higher class. Accustomed to the convenience of modern society, Gu Min couldn't adapt to this backward era. Mother Gu and Father Gu could also see her uneasiness, and they tried their best to satisfy their daughter's needs. As long as she didn't seek death, everything would be fine. For safety's sake, Mother Gu sent people to fill up the pond and change it into a martial arts field. Yes, a martial arts field. Gu Min found an excuse and said that she wanted to practice martial arts. After strengthening her body, she would spend more time with her parents. After acting coquettishly, she finally persuaded them to agree. How can I live without martial arts? Gu Min learned martial arts from a martial arts master. On the surface, she was learning ordinary external martial arts, but she was secretly learning the technique of physical training. Emperor Chen, please forgive me. In order to survive, I will practice the technique of physical training first. I will definitely not steal the copyright of your creation. The technique of physical training originated from Emperor Chen Jiangpingji. It was said that she had specially created it for women, and there were many benefits to practicing it. History also proved this. The rise of women's status could not go unnoticed because of the technique of physical training. From the establishment of the Jiang dynasty to the modern era, it had always been compulsory for girls at the age of 5 or 6. According to scientific research, the technique of physical training could not only improve a woman's physical fitness, but it could also improve her genes. Children born with it would be smart and healthy, and congenital deformities would be reduced. As a person from the future, Gumin naturally knew that the world would not be peaceful for long. As a woman, it was not enough to just have power and status. She also needed absolute strength to protect herself. Otherwise, once the chaotic era came, she would be in a very dangerous situation. Gumin could not help but shiver when she thought of the depiction of the chaotic era of the Five Kingdoms in the television series. She was very clear about the status of women in the era before the Jiang dynasty. Even if she was a noble lady, once faced with the torrent of chaos, she would not have a good ending. Unless, Gumin thought about it and decided on a general plan. She wanted to practice martial arts well, and try her best to control her fate in her own hands. Perhaps she could even follow Emperor Qin and become a bandit to conquer the world in the future. Gumin came from a martial arts family. Her mother had been the national champion for 3 consecutive years when she was young. In order for Gumin to inherit the family's martial arts school and the martial arts school, her mother had been beating and training Gumin from the moment she could walk. As the foundation of all martial arts, the art of body tempering was naturally the most important thing. It had long been engraved in her bones. In this life, she had regained her foundation. She also had the experience of her previous life, so she learned very quickly. The effect of learning martial arts was very obvious. The originally thin and pale girl had become much fatter in a short 3 months. She was very likable. The martial arts teacher was also secretly shocked. This noble lady of the Gu family showed signs of natural divine strength at such a young age. She was really a good seedling to learn martial arts. What a pity, Gumin was a woman, and a noble lady of a noble family. She only practiced martial arts to strengthen her body, not to charge and break through enemy lines like a man. The potential of this innate divine strength was probably going to be wasted. Thinking of this, the martial arts teacher sighed with regret. Many years later, he would still feel regret. When everything was going in a good direction, Gumin had something on her mind. She had been depressed for a long time because of it. Finally, Gumin found her chance. She took advantage of the opportunity when her mother took her to Hajin County to visit relatives, and secretly went to the rumored effective Shangfu temple to visit the master. Such Denxin Qi. What kind of monster are you? Gumin pretended to be troubled and stared at the Buddha statue in the Shangfu temple. Suddenly, she heard a stranger's voice coming from behind. She turned her head and saw a middle-aged monk in a kasaya standing in the corridor. His eyes were burning with a bit of frightening light. I am here to visit the master. There are some things. Gumin inexplicably felt a bit guilty. She did not dare to look at the monk directly. She felt that his eyes were shining and piercing her eyes. Besides, this monk could tell that she had a strong yin qi at a glance. Could it be that he also knew that she was reincarnated? Thinking of this, Gumin struggled in her heart. Finally, she made up her mind. May I know how to address you, master? She gathered her courage and looked straight into his eyes. The middle-aged monk said, You can call me Liaochen. I am not a master. I am just a nameless monk here. Master Liaochen. Gumin bowed slightly. Her eyes were a bit complicated. She probed. Master, do you see any clues? I have calculated. You should have died early. You died at the beginning of June. It is surprising that you are still alive. Liaochen said honestly. Your soul is very strange. There are signs of it leaving your body. You should not live for long, but you. Before he finished, Liaochen shook his head in confusion. It seemed that he had never seen such a special situation. At first, he thought that it was an evil spirit that took over her body. But after a closer look, he realized that Gumin's soul was clear and pure. She did not look like an evil person. Actually, you are right. Gumin felt bitter. She said, I am here today to set up a memorial tablet for someone. For who? Gumin thought for a while and said, This person's name is Gumin. The girl's name was exactly the same as hers. After donating money, Liaochen helped her set up a memorial tablet for Gu Min, so that she could enjoy the worship of the temple. Master, can you tell where I come from? Gu Min probed. Liaochen said, I can't tell clearly, but I am sure that you are not from this world. You are not a bad person, and you are not evil. Gu Min seemed to have found someone who understood her. The depression that had accumulated in her heart finally had an outlet. However, she only vaguely said some things. She did not reveal anything related to history. What do you plan to do? Gu Min pinched her fingers and frowned. Her expression was filled with grievance and confusion. I want to go home. I miss my parents and friends, Liaochen said gently. Although my skills are shallow, I can tell that you have reached the end of your lifespan in your previous life. Gu Min looked distressed. She was not surprised by this answer. She always thought that she was far away from becoming an immortal. She did not expect that she had really ascended. What do you plan to do in the future? Liaochen was not afraid that Gu Min was a person who had reincarnated. Instead, he gently asked her about her plans. Gu Min said, What plans can I have? Liaochen said, The yin qi around you is very thick. If you do not find a way to get rid of it, I am afraid you will not have long to live. If I don't want to die, can I still live? A bad life was better than a good death. Although this era was a pain in the ass, she would be able to see Emperor Chen in 20 to 30 years. Her life would not be in vain. Gu Min felt very conflicted. On one hand, she wanted to live, but on the other hand, she was extremely uncomfortable with this era. Of course you can. Just let me perform a ritual. Gu Min sighed like an old man. Thank you, master. Liaochen said, You and I are fated. You don't have to thank me. Although it is a sinister thing to take over a physical body, you also have a good fate. He personally performed a ritual for Gu Min. She did not know if it was a psychological effect. After the ritual, she felt warm, as if she was nestled in a heating room in the middle of winter. After leaving Shangfu Temple, Gu Min leaned on the black lacquered wooden table and closed her eyes to rest. If you are tired, why don't you take a rest? The servant girl who was kneeling on the side suggested gently. Gu Min muttered, The carriage is so bumpy. My bones are about to fall apart. How can I rest? The carriages in this era did not have any effective shock absorbers. Even if the coachman was careful, the bumpy ride was still disgusting. Gu Min did not get carsick. However, after sitting in ancient carriages for a few times, she also got carsick. I almost vomited my bile from the shock, Gu Min complained in a low voice. Just as she finished speaking, the carriage suddenly stopped. She could not help but lean forward and almost fell. What happened? Don't you know that it will hurt you easily? The servant girl saw Gu Min's pale face and shouted at the coachman. The coachman apologized profusely. He said, It was not my intention. It was because someone was blocking the way. Gu Min frowned. She got up from the mat and bent down to open the curtain of the carriage. The servant girl was shocked. It's okay. Gu Min stopped the servant girl. She only saw what happened outside after she got out of the carriage. It turned out that they were at the bend of the mountain road. Someone's carriage was parked at the bend. The coachman did not see it because of the angle. When he saw it, the two carriages were already very close to each other. The coachman had to tighten the reins to force the horses to stop. Gu Min did not wait for the servant girl to prepare the carriage stool. She held the carriage with one hand and jumped down. Her childish face looked a bit serious. She had good eyesight and could easily see what happened to the carriages in front of her. The coachman went forward to negotiate, hoping that the other party would avoid the road and let them go first. However, the other party was rude and unreasonable. The rich young Langjun slightly raised his chin and directly lashed out with the long whip in his hand. The coachman dodged in time, but his nose was still hit by the whip. Seeing that the coachman dodged, the young Langjun said arrogantly, Lu is cleaning the house. Can't you see it with your dog eyes? Whose dog eyes are you talking about? With her excellent hearing, Gu Min heard this and immediately became angry. She brushed away the hand of the maid who was trying to stop her and strode forward aggressively. As the saying goes, a good dog doesn't stand in the way. What are your intentions by blocking this place in such a majestic manner? This is the bend of the mountain road. If the carriage is not controlled well, it will either collide with you or fall off the cliff. Who are you calling a dog? The handsome young Langjun was blocked by Gu Min's words. He was so angry that his face almost turned red. Of course I'm calling you. Not only are you a dog, but you are also immoral. Naughty boy, how did the adults in your family teach you such a lousy upbringing? Gu Min did not want to bully children. However, in the face of such a mean boy, if she did not teach him a lesson, he would really think that he was the king. The young Langjun was so angry that his eyes turned red. Without saying anything, he swung the whip in his hand towards Gu Min's face. The few servant girls who served Gu Min were so scared that their faces turned pale. Only Gu Min's face was cold. She raised her hand and held the whip tightly in her hand. She exerted force with her wrist and pulled the shocked young Langjun to the ground. His body was dragged for a distance, and his face was covered with dirt. You bully me. The young Langjun let go of the whip. His handsome face was scratched on the ground, and he felt a burning pain. First you hurt me. Then, you used the whip when you couldn't win. Now you've been killed, and you even know how to complain first. Gu Min snatched the whip and looked down at the young Langjun. She said coldly, "As I said, good dogs don't block the road. Make way for your carriage team." The young Langjun was so scared that his eyes turned red and watery. He stood up in a sitting position and looked at Gu Min. "You bully me." Gu Min said, "Because you're useless." The young Langjun said angrily, "I've never seen a woman as vulgar as you." "Haven't I seen it now?" Gu Min said sharply. "I've also never seen someone as shameless as you. You block the mountain road and kill people. You whip people for no reason. Do you really think you're the king? If I wasn't in a good mood today, I would have beaten your face." The young Langjun was angry. He said to the servants behind him, "Catch this girl." Gu Min also said, "Humph, do you think you're the only one who brought people?" The two families confronted each other. The servant advised, "Second Langjun, it's more important to find your wife. If we delay, we won't be able to catch the kidnapper." When the young Langjun heard this, he suppressed the anger in his heart angrily. He glared at Gu Min, took a deep breath and said, "I'm not going to argue with a little girl like you." Gu Min snorted coldly. She heard the servant's words and asked, "Did you lose someone in your family?" The young Langjun thought that Gu Min had some clues. He didn't care about being angry and hurriedly said, "Have you seen her?" "No. I heard your servant say something about a kidnapper." Gu Min guessed that the young Langjun was so impolite because he lost his cousin. The anger in her heart was greatly extinguished. She was a righteous and warm-hearted person. She hated human traffickers who abducted women and children the most. Seeing the young Langjun's anxious look, she couldn't help but sympathize with him. "Tell me what she looks like. I'll send someone to keep an eye on her." The young Langjun looked up and glanced at Gu Min. He muttered, "I don't need your fake sympathy." After saying this, he ordered the carriage to move to a corner, and made way for Gu Min's carriage to pass. What a bad temper. Gu Min glanced at the young Langjun's carriage, and found that there was a willow leaf-shaped family emblem engraved on the outside of the carriage. The servant whispered in her ear, "The Liu family of Hejian." Gu Min frowned slightly. She seemed to be surprised. The Liu family of Hejian? Wasn't that Empress Chen's family? Even though Empress Chen's surname was Jiang, everyone knew that she was from the Liu family of Hejian. She left the clan at the age of 12, and changed her surname. The servant thought that Gu Min was curious, so she explained to her, "Yes, it's the Liu family of Hejian that my aunt's cousin married." Cousin? Gu Min didn't know this part at all. She just echoed, "There seems to be such a part." The mother of Gu Min's current body had a cousin who was not married yet. This cousin married to Hejian County, and became the wife of the eldest son of the first branch of the Liu family. Now she was also the mother of the family. The servant continued, "Look at that young Langjun's carriage, family emblem, clothes and age. He's most likely a direct descendant of the Liu family." Gu Min said, "Anyway, it has nothing to do with me. He was in the wrong first. I'm not afraid even if he goes to complain." The servant smiled. The Liu family only has a little reputation in Hejian County. A bunch of direct descendants are not as important as my aunt. If the young Langjun really went to complain, he would most likely be forced by his parents to apologize to Gumin. Gumin said helplessly, "Forget it. I don't want to compare myself with this kind of naughty child." At such a young age, he threw a whip at others. Gumin's body was only 6 years old, but he still had the heart to do it. How could he be merciful? To put it bluntly, this was called evil. However, I'm more worried about his cousin. From what he said, it seems that she was kidnapped. In Gumin's era, human trafficking was still rampant, and human trafficking was rampant. The better ones were sold deep in the mountains and forests. The worse ones were tortured until they became disabled and begged everywhere. The worse ones were directly used as living targets to supply organs. In this ignorant and backward ancient times, children who were abducted would not have a good ending, especially girls. It was not bad if they were abducted and sold as child brides. The unluckier ones would be sold to brothels and stuck in the mud for the rest of their lives. Thinking of this, Gumin showed a look of pity. Tell them to go out and pay attention to any suspicious people and girls on the road. That young Langjun was quite annoying, but it was better to save his cousin if possible. Gumin had always been lucky. Since she was a child, she had been the lucky fish in the eyes of her relatives and classmates. She could win a small prize in any lottery ticket. Her good luck had continued until now. There was still a quarter of an hour before they entered the city. She heard something with her sharp ears. "Stop." Gumin lifted the curtain of the carriage and asked, "Did someone pass by us just now?" The servant who was guarding the carriage said, "There was a farmer couple with a cattle." Because the cattle smelled too strong, and they were afraid of offending Gumin, they avoided it. Gumin said, "Which direction did they go?" The servant was puzzled. "To the south." Gumin said, "Go after them. I heard a child crying. It seemed to be a girl." Chapter 1868. Everyone looked at each other. They didn't see the girl, let alone the sound of a girl crying. Gumin was furious and scolded. "Hurry up and catch up with them." The body refining technique could greatly enhance the 5 senses, but her hearing in her previous life wasn't so abnormal. This was a golden finger of rebirth. Yes, the servant didn't dare to disobey. He took a few people and rode after the farmer couple. After a while he caught them. "First lady, I've brought them back." The servant cupped the couple's hands behind their back and forced them to kneel on the mud covered with stones. The couple looked ordinary. Their skin was dark brown after years of exposure to the sun. They were afraid of the servant and the magnificent carriage, so they trembled and didn't dare to make a sound. Gumin jumped off the carriage and walked straight towards the aged cow. The couple revealed a look of fear. What do you want?" Fear flashed in the farmer woman's eyes. Her big yellow teeth were still covered with vegetable leaves. She looked mean but weak at heart. Seeing that Gumin did not stop, she made up her mind and scolded. "Where did this little bitch come from? You want to rob?" Just as she was about to scold, the servant kicked the farmer woman's back. She fell forward and moaned in pain. "Untie the basket." The honest farmer said, "My lady, the things in the basket are worthless and smelly. Don't." Before he finished speaking, Gumin picked up a stone and accurately hit the farmer's left face. The force was so strong that the smell of iron came out of his mouth. "Shut them up." The servant quickly found some rags to cover their mouths. At the same time, the basket on the cow's back was untied. Gumin pushed away all the things on the basket and found a girl in a pink dress curled up at the bottom. The other basket contained a 13 or 14-year-old boy. The boy seemed to have fainted. His dry lips were chapped. Gumin asked the servant to dig out the boy. She bent down and picked up the girl. "Look at this boy. If he's dead, bury him. If he's still alive, save his life." The servant obeyed and found that the youth's body was covered with bruises, and both of his legs were broken. The couple were very excited as if Gumin was the evil person who robbed their son and daughter-in-law. In fact, that was the case. The young man was the son they had just bought to carry on the family line, and the girl was the daughter-in-law they had abducted to be the child bride of their son. When Gumin heard the couple say that they couldn't have another child, that they would end their family line, that they had let down their ancestors, and that they had to have a son to continue their family line. She sneered and said, "Are you more noble than the royal family? Why, how many dragon chairs are there waiting for my son to sit on? Come on, with your poor and trashy appearance. The children you give birth to are also trash scum. Continue the family line? How could we face our ancestors? What a joke." The maid was used to filtering out some of Gu Min's strange words. The expert who examined Gu Min had said that she could only return to her body if she was lucky. If she was not careful, her soul might be taken away. Hence, the Gu residence's people did not dare to restrict Gu Min, afraid of breaking a taboo and making her unhappy. "First Lady, how should we deal with this couple?" Gu Min said. "Trash should go wherever it's supposed to go. How can they speak so eloquently about human trafficking? Who gave them face?" The maid was put in a difficult position. Her First Lady's words were too vague, and she did not understand. Hand them over to the authorities? Gu Min thought about it and nodded. It's good to hand them over to the authorities. After all, it is not good to punish them privately. Gu Min carried the girl in pink onto the carriage and got the maid to bring clean water and snacks. "Don't worry. This place is already safe. That couple will not have a good ending," Gu Min said to the girl with a smile. "Do you have a cousin? That person is young, but he has a bad temper and often throws a whip at people. I just saw him on the way." The girl cried until her voice was hoarse. Her eyes were red and swollen, squeezing her large eyes into slits. When Gu Min saw that the girl did not say anything, she took the initiative to say, "I don't know which residence you are from. Why don't I send you to your cousin first?" The girl nodded slightly as she hugged the snacks. She could not help but look at Gu Min from the corner of her eye. Gu Min was only 1 or 2 years older than the girl, but she felt that Gu Min was much more reliable than her cousin, and gave her a sense of security. It could be seen that the girl had a good upbringing. Even though she was young, she sat properly and ate properly. She did not make a fuss and was very cute. Gu Min sent someone to chase after the Lu Langjun and his group. They chased at full speed and caught up with them after more than 2 hours. "Xiaodai, how are you? Are you alright? You scared me to death." The carriage of the Lu family's Langjun was almost racing over. He jumped off the carriage and ran over before the horses and carriages had even stopped. When the girl saw the young Langjun, she pouted her lips and buried her head in Gu Min's arms, turning her back to the Lu Langjun. "Why is it you again?" The young Langjun was embarrassed. His gaze turned to Gu Min's face. "Did you save my cousin?" Gu Min sneered. "If it wasn't me, then who else could it be?" The young Langjun said. "Why do you speak so sarcastically? I have never seen an aristocratic girl with no upbringing like you." Gu Min said. "Family upbringing is directed at the person. You're not." The young Langjun almost fell down. "Why are you calling me an animal?" Gu Min laughed. "When did I say you were an animal? Don't take it personally." The young Langjun was angry and angry. However, Gu Min was the one who saved his cousin, so he had to suppress his anger no matter how big it was. Gu Min asked, "Your cousin is too careless. Why didn't he send someone to keep an eye on her? Why did he let her be taken away?" The girl's cousin was so annoying. It was obvious that he was going to be a playboy in the future. When he went out, he would definitely bring guards with him to prevent him from being put in a sack. At this moment, the girl finally reacted. Her voice was already hoarse from crying, so it was very difficult for her to speak. "Big sister, this is not my fault." The girl was called by Dai. She was currently staying at her cousin's house. Because of her naughty personality, she often pestered the wet nurse to go out and play. The wet nurse did not take good care of the girl. She often treated the girl perfunctorily. Nothing happened to the girl before, so she was even more careless. This time, she only cared about the rouge and face powder sold by the vendors. She did not even know that the girl had been secretly taken away by the couple. When she found out, the girl had already been carried far away. The wet nurse was afraid that the head of the family would blame her, so she did not report it immediately. Instead, she chose to pack up the gold, silver, and other valuables that she usually kept and prepared to run away. The young Langjun only realized that something was wrong when he was playing with his cousin after school. He brought some people to chase after the wet nurse and blocked her halfway up the mountain. When Gu Min met her little Langjun, he was angrily whipping the wet nurse, making her cry out in pain. When Gu Min knew about this, her impression of the young Langjun improved a little. Although his temper was a little bad, he was still a good brother who loved his sister. His sister-con personality was likable no matter where it was. She quickly suppressed this thought because of the young Longjuan's self-introduction. I am Lu Shi. Gu Min did not hear what Lu Shi said after that. The name kept echoing in her mind. This Lu Shi was not the Lu Shi that she knew. He was not Gu Min's university professor. He was the real scumbag Lu Shi in history. The young Langjun felt uncomfortable being stared at by Gu Min. He could not help but blush and said harshly, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Although he was her cousin's savior, her temperament was indeed annoying. How could there be such a vulgar noble lady? Gu Min sneered, "Nothing. You look handsome." Lu Shi could not help but straighten his chest when he heard this. At least you have good taste. You can distinguish between beauty and ugliness. Gu Min suppressed the corner of her mouth and returned the white butterfly to Lu Shi. Scumbags were contagious. She did not want to have any more contact with Lu Shi. Even if Lu Shi was Emperor Chen's biological father, he was also a famous lecher in history. He was a fighter among the scumbags. As the only fan of Emperor Chen, she hated Lu Shi the most in history. The other characters had to be pushed back. Lu Shi was indeed mischievous, but he was not ignorant of other people's eyes. Gu Min did not hide her disgust, so he was angry. Humph. Lu Shi was about to leave with his cousin. There was an indescribable grievance on his young face. As the second legitimate son of the Lu family, when had he ever been stared at like this? He was not angry at Gu Min only because she had saved his cousin, and because of the family emblem on Gu Min's carriage. Lu Shi was not a dabbler like Gu Min. He knew the family emblem of each family since he was a child. He knew that the children of each family had different styles. Through this, he could determine the other's background and status in the family. Lu Shi could not afford to offend Gu Min. Cousin, are you angry? Bai Dai followed Lu Shi into the carriage. She sensed that Lu Shi was in a bad mood. I didn't do it on purpose. Lu Shi's sitting posture was not standard. He looked very wild and rude. Facing his cute cousin who was in trouble, he restrained himself and said, "This has nothing to do with you. If Xiao Dai wants to go out and play in the future, remember to send someone to tell me. I will send someone to follow you in case the servants don't serve you well again." Bai Dai tilted her head and asked, "Where's the nanny?" Lu Shi sneered. She died after a few lashes. This kind of lowly servant who has no respect for her superiors should end up like this. He was young, but he had whipped many servants to death. Everyone in the Lu family knew that Lu Erlang was a foppish playboy who did not care about human life. Of course, this was normal in the aristocratic families. The aristocratic families had the right to kill and seize, especially those servants who did not serve them well, played tricks, and framed their masters. The difference was that the servants of other families were directly thrown to the servants and beaten to death, but Lu Shi did it himself. The result was the same, but he gained a different reputation. The foppish playboy Lu Shi was also quite famous in Hejian County. Bai Dai was silent after hearing this. She pouted, obviously disagreeing with Lu Shi's way of handling things. When Lu Shi returned home with Bai Dai, he heard his mother's slightly mean voice as he stepped into the hall. She seemed to be cursing someone. When she saw Lu Shi coming, the ferocious and mean expression on her face did not disappear. "Why did you get off school so late today?" Lu Shi's eyelids drooped slightly. He had long been used to his mother's arbitrary and domineering ways. She wanted to know his whereabouts 24 hours a day. Once he was out of her control, his mother would become hysterical. TSK, this appearance was really ugly. Lu Shi often felt that he was a little too smart in front of his mother. On one hand, he was grateful for his mother's care and pampering, but on the other hand, he despised her attitude from the bottom of his heart. The former came from the bottom of his heart, and the latter couldn't be suppressed. This caused Lu Shi to not really like to be in contact with her. He was afraid that he would not be able to control his disgust and rejection and hurt his mother's heart. "I went out with Xiao Dai to play." Lu Shi suppressed the matter of Bai Dai being kidnapped. He knew his mother's temperament very well. His cousin, Bai Dai, lost her mother at a young age and was not loved by her father. When she was very young, her father kicked her to the Lu residence with the excuse that having a female elder was good for marriage. His mother was also a person who flattered the strong and trampled on the weak. Naturally, she would not like his cousin. If his mother knew that Bai Dai was kidnapped, she would most likely hate her even more. The reason why Bai Dai's wet nurse treated her so disdainfully was more or less because of his mother's indulgence. Mrs. Lu said harshly, "She doesn't know this." "Don't you know this?" Lu Shi said. "Xiao Dai is still young and she is living in the Lu residence as a guest. I am just doing my part as a host." Mrs. Lu said. "She knows how to seduce people at such a young age. She just wants to cling on to you because of the child marriage." Lu Shi's patience was exhausted. He said coldly, "I am tired. I will leave now." Lady Lu already had a belly full of anger. She didn't expect that she would kick an iron plate on her beloved second son. She immediately became furious. Second Langjun, Mrs. Lu was also angry today. "Please don't take it to heart." The old nanny who served Mrs. Lu sent Lu Shi out, and couldn't help but say something. Angered by someone? Who could anger her? Mrs. Lu's status in Hejian County was not high, but his mother was recognized as the noblest lady in Hejian County. Who could anger her? The old nanny said. Who else could it be? Mrs. Lu's cousin, the one who married into the Gu family. Lu Shi understood. His mother had a cousin before she got married. The two of them were equally important in the family. As a noble lady, she had to keep her eyes open for the first time. Marriage was equivalent to her second first time. Her status and honor for the rest of her life would be tied to the husband's family. Because the sexes were quite open, it was normal for unmarried girls to have a lover before marriage. His mother liked a young and handsome scholar when she was still in her boudoir. She even had a rendezvous with him under the moonlight. However, she was born into a big family. She had to cover up her lover before marriage to avoid affecting her reputation. If her reputation was bad, even if she was born into a big family, it would not be easy for her to find a good husband. So his mother had always been careful. However, his mother's cousin was more capable and skillful. When they were discussing marriage, she tricked his mother and let others see her exchanging a token with a scholar. Of course, it was not fatal. At most, it would be a romantic reputation that would affect the status of the marriage. That cousin married into the Gu family because of her good family background and reputation. His mother married into the Lu family in Hejian County. Even though she was also the wife of the Lu family in Hejian County, it was not as glorious as the Gu family in Langyi. Lu Shi sneered. I stayed in the Gu family in Langyi. How did I offend you? The old maid said. She came to visit us but left out the first lady. It was obvious that she looked down on our poor relatives. They had just said that the first lady looked down on their poor relatives. The next day, the visiting card was sent to the mansion. Lu Shi sat next to his mother. He was surprised to find that the daughter next to his aunt was that sharp-tongued and vulgar girl. He stared at her, but Gu Min ignored him as if nothing had happened. You recognized me just now. Why didn't you admit it? Lu Shi was ordered to entertain Gu Min. He took her to the backyard garden. He did not expect her to be so arrogant. Are we close? We are. I didn't expect you to be. Lu Shi said. They say you are stupid, but I think you are smart. How was she stupid? She was sharp-tongued and vulgar. Gu Min rolled her eyes at him and ignored him. Even if Lu Shi was just a bad-tempered Shota, not a scumbag, history told Gu Min that he would become a scumbag. Gu Min thought of the history professor Lu Shi. He had said that Emperor Chen's biological mother was Gu Zhen's sister, not Gu Zhen. This speculation was criticized by the mainstream media, and the royal family did not admit it. He thought the professor's speculation was funny. If what he said was true, didn't it mean that she was going to marry a scumbag? Impossible. She had transmigrated, and the original owner had died young. How could Emperor Chen's mother be Gu Min? Right. She had not seen Gu Zhen after transmigrating for so long. She had to go back and take a look. Maybe she could see the future Emperor Chen's childhood through the lowly version of Gu Zhen. Is this your upbringing? Calling people stupid to their faces? Gumin snorted. Lucy could not win against her, so he thought of another way to get back at her. I saw you catch the whip with your bare hands. Have you practiced martial arts? Gumin said humbly. A little. I also learned some martial arts from a martial arts master. Do you want to spar with me? Gumin turned to look at him. Are you sure? Lucy said. Don't be afraid. I will go easy on you. I won't use a whip or other weapons. Gumin snorted. Arrogant. I can beat you with one hand. Lucy was speechless. Listen to what she said. Who was the arrogant one? It turned out that Lucy was really no match for her. He was pressed to the ground and begged for mercy. What kind of strength is this? You're like a bull. Lucy rubbed his bruised wrist. He grimaced in pain and tears came out. Gumin said, It's not that I'm strong. It's that you can't take a beating. What does it have to do with me? Lucy curled his lips. He was angry, but did not dare to say anything. What's the name of the martial arts master who taught you? Gumin rolled her eyes at him. What? Are you trying to poach me? Are you trying to get him to teach you martial arts and then beat me up? Lucy's thoughts were exposed, but he was not angry. He admitted it openly. So what? A man who beats a woman is so useless. Gumin sneered. A man who can't even beat a woman is even more useless. Lucy was speechless at Gumin's words. He was so angry that he almost fell to the ground. Gumin had been in Hajin County for 2 months. She had become familiar with Lucy, but she was still more familiar with Bai Dai. She really liked the cute girl who blushed at every turn. She was soft and fragrant. I heard that there is a super famous Lang Lang Alley in Hajin County. Have you been there? Lang Lang Alley sounded strange, but it was actually a red light district, a place that could not be spoken of. Gumin remembered a famous saying on the internet. Which woman didn't go to the brothel to experience the world? This time she had no soul. Lang Lang Alley was located on a street near the market in Hajin County. It was very far from Lucy's old house. Lucy blushed and scolded. You're really shameless. Which girl would want to go to that kind of place? You're such a hypocrite. I saw the fire avoidance painting in your study. You're so young, but you're so naughty. How dare you scold me? You even looked at that. Shameless. No matter how bad Lucy's personality was, he was still a kid. He couldn't resist his curiosity. He couldn't resist the urging of others. He learned from the older Langjuns in his family, and peeked at the fire avoidance painting. He was ashamed of himself, but he didn't expect Gumin to be so straightforward. Are you going or not? Nope. Fine, I'll go if you don't want to. Gumin was not afraid of anything. She had been close to Lucy recently. If her mother blamed her, she would blame it on Lucy. The sky was dark. There were red lights on both sides of the street, making the night look as bright as day. The wind was blowing, and flowers were blooming everywhere. Haha, this is Lang Lang Alley? It's so lively. Gumin looked at the scenery outside the carriage and exclaimed. Lucy crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked gloomy. Look at me. Don't I look like a playboy? Gumin was wearing a man's shirt. Because she was still young, people wouldn't suspect that she was a girl. Lucy attacked her mercilessly. You haven't even grown your pubic hair yet. How dare you call yourself a playboy? Gumin curled her lips. The two of them went to the famous brothel in Lang Lang Alley with the help of the guards. The matchmakers couldn't help but laugh when they saw them. They had seen all kinds of customers, but they had never seen a kid who was 6 or 7 years old. Ordinary boys were still wearing open crotch pants. Lucy's ears were red. I've lost all my face. Gumin said, Come on. You don't have any face left. Don't blame it on me. Lucy had been an educator for many years, but he was a complete slacker. He couldn't even write a word well. He was often punished by his father and brothers. Lang Lang Alley was a brothel, but it was also elegant. Gumin laughed. These days, no one wants a brothel who can't recite poetry and is proficient in it. Lucy's face darkened. He was suddenly angry. There was no brothel in Lang Lang Alley. Gumin's words were obviously mocking him for being ignorant and incompetent. He didn't have a family to rely on, and was inferior to a brothel. You can't stop your mouth. Sooner or later, you'll die because of it, he said angrily. Let's see who's blind enough to marry you. Gumin laughed. You don't have to worry. With the status of the Gu family, there are many people who want to marry me. Lucy saw that Gumin didn't have any stage fright in Langlang Alley. Instead, she was laughing and playing with the other girls. His face turned green. Shameless. The news of the two children going to Langlang Alley naturally reached the ears of their parents. Mrs. Gu thought that Lucy had instigated it, and was suddenly angry. You're really bad. You know how to go to brothels at such a young age. If my son was not so young, he would have lost his reputation. Gumin secretly shrugged and betrayed Lucy without any burden. Anyway, this playboy's reputation was already bad. It was normal for him to be a scapegoat. Perhaps it was because Lucy's character was too bad. He had gone to the suburbs with his friends to race horses, but the horse had been bitten by a vegetable snake and was frightened. Gumin just happened to pass by on her horse and caught up with him in a cloud of dust. She then rescued the little foppish playboy who had lost his head out of fear. Your horsemanship is so bad. Don't come out to die. Gumin stood up and accidentally touched his wound. She secretly gasped. Lucy's eyes were red and his breath was short because of fear. He looked very pitiful. I don't need you to pretend to be kind. Lucy raised his eyes to look at Gumin, who was standing against the light. He felt a stinging pain in his eyes. Thinking of her mockery, he suddenly became angry. TSK, my good intentions are taken as malicious intent. Gumin hit the whip and jumped on the horse. She actually left Lucy where he was and planned to let the playboy walk home pitifully. Gumin. Lucy secretly clenched his teeth and tears of grievance came out of his eyes. Not long after, he heard the sound of horse hooves. It was Gumin who had returned. Thinking about it, you are quite pitiful. Come on and ride steadily. Not long after, Gumin returned with her mother. In the blink of an eye, it was winter. Because of the terrain in Langyi County, the winter was not very cold. However, the surrounding mountains were covered with snow. Many gentry families and celebrities liked to go up the mountain during this season to hold poetry meetings. Gumin's father was one of the famous people in Langyi. Not only was he a famous person, but he was also a famous person. He was a high official in the imperial court, and had also been in charge of the talent selection assessment in Dongqing. He was the person that all the forces wanted to curry favor with. Her father was very powerful and her family was also very powerful. Occasionally, Gumin would also feel proud. She was probably the legendary heroine with the halo of the heroine. She was born at the end of the line that others could not reach even if they worked hard for a lifetime. Of course, this thought only lasted for a while. She was the Gumin of the future world 300 years later, not the retarded Gumin of this era. If she really wanted to say that she would be reincarnated, the credit should be given to the original owner. As an outsider, she was lucky to have what she had today. She should cherish what she had instead of being proud of herself. Because he was worried that his daughter would be bored at home, her father specially took her out to participate in a gathering organized by the famous scholars. Gumin was confused. If she really had to describe her feelings, it could be summed up in 4 words. I don't understand, but I think it's awesome. Her father saw that Gumin's little face was a little tired, so he smiled and ordered the maid to take her around. Gumin smiled and said, "Thank you, father." In her previous life, Gumin was born in a coastal city in the south. The first time she saw snow was in the winter of her first semester at Tianhua University. That snow was really heavy. It fell continuously for 2 days, and the thickness was up to her calves. The snow on the mountain was not heavy, and the thickness was only half a knuckle. It was a thin layer that began to melt as soon as the sun came out. As the saying goes, it's not cold when it snows, but when it melts, it's coldest when it melts. Gumin shivered and wrapped her cloak tightly around her body. It's so beautiful. Passing by a forest of red plum blossoms covered in snow, the eye-catching red color almost caught people's eyes at first glance. She tiptoed and tried to break off a plum blossom, but she was short and could not reach it even after a while. There's a broken temple here. The maid advised. Lady, you can't go to such a dark and gloomy place. Gumin said, the temple worships deities. Even if it's broken, ordinary demons wouldn't dare to go near it, right? How is it gloomy? As soon as she finished speaking, she heard a suppressed laugh. There's someone in the broken temple? Who's peeping and eavesdropping there? Gu Min lifted the hem of her dress and entered the rundown temple. She found a bonfire inside, and a young man with a pale complexion and patched clothes was sitting near the bonfire. This young man was very good-looking. Even though he was sitting in the broken temple, he gave people the illusion that he was in a high position. This young man's eyebrows were filled with a strong sense of righteousness, and his eyes were clear and bright. At a glance, one could tell that he was an upright and magnanimous person. At this moment, a sentence echoed in Gu Min's mind. Standing like an orchid, smiling like the bright moon in one's bosom. In her era, even the young best actor would not be able to match up to this kind of appearance. Looking at the young man's clothes, Gu Min knew that he lived a poor life. He was most likely a poor scholar from a poor family. Was it you who laughed just now? Gu Min asked the young man, but her eyes were fixed on his fingers. This person's fingers were red from the cold, and there were even frostbites in some places. His clothes were shabby and thin. He was obviously shivering in the cold, but his expression was still calm. Gu Min secretly curled her lips. He was so poor, but he still put on the airs of a scholar. She really couldn't deal with these ancient people. The young man seemed to be sick, and his voice was hoarse and weak. Hearing the clever words from the young lady, I deeply agree. He seemed to want to say something, but an urge to cough rose in his throat. He coughed so hard that his whole face turned red, and the veins on his forehead bulged. You're very sick. Why don't you see a doctor? The young man said. I'm penniless and have no fixed abode. Where can I get the money to see a doctor? It's just a minor illness. It's not a big deal. That won't do. A minor illness can easily become a major illness if it's dragged on. Don't you know this? Gu Min said. Looking at your clothes and the book box next to you, you should be a literate person. You can just find a job to copy letters and books to get the money for the medicine. The young man smiled and said, Young lady's words remind me of a saying. Gu Min tilted her head and asked, Are you trying to say, why don't I eat minced meat? The young man bowed and said, Sorry for the offense. Gu Min said, TSK, you really want to say that about me? The young man smiled bitterly and said, Although what the young lady said is a way to make a living, imagination is often different from reality. It's not that easy to make a living. Gu Min didn't know what was going on, but looking at the young man's open and honest attitude, Gu Min knew that she had misunderstood him. But you can't continue to delay this illness of yours. Even if Gu Min didn't have any medical skills, she knew that the young man was seriously ill. If the fever was too serious, it could even turn into pneumonia. Pneumonia had a high fatality rate in her era, not to mention the current era with low medical standards. The young man put a fist to his lips and coughed lightly. He smiled and said, Let fate decide. Gu Min was even more confused. How could he still smile when he was so seriously ill? Do you have parents? The young man said. My father passed away, and I have a mother at home. Gu Min said in an old-fashioned manner, Since you have an old mother at home that needs your support, you should cherish your body more and think of a way to cure your illness. You're young and strong, and you're literate. Think of a way. There's always another way out. The young man was amused by Gu Min. Gu Min said again, If it were me, I'd definitely think of a way to live as long as I can live. The young man was seriously ill, but his eyes were as dazzling as the moon and stars in the sky. Young lady, you're young, but you have a lot of ideas. I'm slow-witted and can't think of another way to survive. What should I do? Gu Min blinked and suddenly said, What's your name? The young man asked her, Why are you asking this? I pity that you have an old mother at home to support, and you're sick. Even if you want to earn money, you can't. Gu Min rolled her eyes and said to the young man with a smile, How about this? Tell me your name and write me an IOU. I'll lend you some money for a while. When your body is better and you have the ability to earn money, you can return the money to me. Wouldn't that be the best of both worlds? How about it? The young man coughed with a smile. Gu Min said angrily, What? You don't believe me? Why wouldn't I believe you? The pearls and jade from your temples are worth several years of my chewing. Of course I believe you. the young man said with a smile. However, it's a good thing that you're kind, but you can't be overly kind. If I have any evil intentions, what should I do? Gumin curled her lips and said, You think too highly of yourself. How can you have any evil intentions when you're so sick? You're the one who has the heart but is powerless. The young man shook his head with a smile. Gumin said, Why? You don't accept it? Are you also one of those stubborn and pedantic scholars who would rather die than accept food given in handouts? The young man asked. Those who don't accept food given in handouts are praised for having integrity and pride. How come you call me a stubborn and pedantic scholar? Gumin spread her hands and said, I'm a layman. My life is the most important. The young man said with a smile, Interesting. That's really interesting. Gumin felt a little creeped out by the young man's stare. She pouted and said, What's interesting? The young man refused to say it clearly. He only said, My surname is Zhu and my name is Ning. My courtesy name is Chunen. Gumin repeated, Zhu Ning Zhu Cheng. This name sounds familiar. She didn't have the memories of the original owner of this body. A name that sounded familiar to her must be someone from her previous life. Could it be that this Zhu Ning was a character from a history book? If time could be reversed, Gumin definitely wouldn't dare to slack off during class. She raised her hand to her forehead and said in distress, Forget it. If I can't remember, then I won't think about it. Gumin asked the servant girl to bring her 10 taels of silver, and lent it to the young man. The young man took out a blank bamboo slip and an IOU. Yuanjing? Gumin's eyes suddenly widened. She looked at it again and again. Besides Zhu Ning and his courtesy name Chun, and there were also 2 small characters. Yuanjing. The young man said. It's just a nickname I came up with out of boredom. Gumin calculated the young man's age, and almost knelt down for him. Damn, what kind of luck did she have to meet the rumored male lead? Tom Su Yuanjing. Why did she say so? She could tell by looking at Yuanjing's life history. He was definitely Tom Su, a bug with the male lead halo. Master Yuanjing was born in the last years of Dongqing, and was one of the famous scholars of the time. He was born with auspicious signs, and his childhood experience was even more extraordinary. He met an immortal at the age of 7, and was blessed by the immortal, who cleansed his marrow and changed his bones. Before he was 20, he was already well versed in astronomy and geography. He was proficient in the 5 elements, 8 trigrams, and Chimanduanjia. He was also proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and poetry. He was even proficient in irrigation and water conservancy and knew about business and military strategy. He was a walking demon with a limitless halo. In the last years of Dongqing, he battled with the envoy of the northern borderline. He took 3 cities and angered the envoy to death. He became famous after the battle. After he became famous, Master Yuanjing did not accept the recruitment of various forces. Instead, he returned to his ancestral home in Langia County and opened a private school. At that time, private schools were popular in Langia County. Master Yuanjing relied on his reputation to slowly attract students and built his reputation. He devoted himself to teaching for more than 10 years. 3 of his disciples later became famous strategists during the chaos of the 5 kingdoms. Other than that, the students who studied in his private school were also successful. 56 of them became officials and 23 of them became famous. During the chaos of the 5 kingdoms, it was more like a charaba for Master Yuanjing's students than a chaotic fight among the feudal lords. They were in almost every feudal lord's tent and each occupied a different position. During the chaos of the 5 kingdoms, Master Yuanjing did not become an official. However, his teaching methods were quite advanced. After the Jiang dynasty was founded, Emperor Chen gave him the supreme honor of the world's teacher. Of course, Secretary Shi, the master of the Ziyuan mirror, declined the honor. In all fairness, if Gumin was Master Yuanjing, she would also decline it. Why? Master Yuanjing taught countless students in his life. Most of his students who became officials died in the hands of Emperor Qin. Although the chaos was cruel, from a teacher's point of view, it was really heartbreaking. Master Yuanjing's 3 most beloved students, Cheng Jing, Lu Zheng, and Han Yu, died because of Emperor Qin. Cheng Jing committed suicide in prison, Lu Jing jumped out of the city and died, and Han Yu committed suicide by swallowing gold. It was not Emperor Chen who did it, but she did it. Even if Master Yuanjing did not bear a grudge because of this, it would still be difficult for him to calm down. This could be seen from the epitaph that Master Yuanjing wrote for himself. It was difficult to calm down, and it was difficult to calm down. There was still a lot of contribution to be made. Jiang Dynasty's initial educational foundation was created by this old man. The students of later generations loved and hated him at the same time. On the year of the college entrance examination, there was a grave-digging craze among the students. The students formed groups to dig Master Yuanjing's grave. Of course, this was only said verbally. No one dared to do it. The students were eager to learn from Master Yuanjing. At this moment, seeing Master Yuanjing in the flesh, Gumin could not help but want to worship this great god. The young man noticed that Gumin's expression was complicated. He asked, "What's wrong with this nickname?" Gumin stammered, "There's nothing wrong with it. Master Yuanjing is good. I believe you will be remembered in history." The young man smiled faintly. Gumin felt uncomfortable as if she was sitting on pins and needles. "I will definitely repay you for your kindness today in the future." Gumin scratched her head and said, "Let me think. I think you will be very capable in the future, and will be famous. If you open a private school in the future, I will definitely let you teach my child. You don't have to teach your child well. You just have to be decent." At that time he might even send Gu Zhen's child, the future Emperor Chen, to Master Yuanjing's private school. In that case, Emperor Chen and the future hero would be classmates. They would not stab each other so harshly, right? The young man burst into laughter. He almost choked. "You're only 6 years old now. Why are you thinking of your own child?" Gumin blushed. "This is called planning for a rainy day. I'm sure you have the potential to be famous. Why don't we take a gamble?" Gambling is a bad karma. Skills are not part of the 6 arts. The saints also said that a gentleman should not gamble. You shouldn't get involved in such a bad habit at such a young age. The young version of Master Yuanjing looked like he would in the future. Gumin murmured in her heart. He looked like a teaching director. Gumin said, "With your looks, you should be a teacher who teaches and educates people." The young man smiled faintly without saying anything. Gumin stood up and flicked off the dust on her dress. "I'll go back first. I don't want father to worry. We'll meet again if fate allows it." She ran away, leaving Zhu Ning sitting in the same place. He looked at the borrowed money and smiled bitterly. It doesn't seem like an evil spirit. Although the young man had only learned mystic arts for a short time, he was extremely talented. He was a genius who could understand everything with just a hint. He noticed something was wrong just by looking at Gumin's face. After testing her, he realized that she was a pure and innocent person. She did not look like an evil spirit at all. On the other side, Gumin returned to the assembly. The maidservant secretly told Gumin's father about her experience. "Zhu Ning? Isn't he a proud scholar from a poor family? Why is he willing to accept Min Er's financial aid?" Gumin said, "He's healthy, but he hides in the ruined temple to avoid the snow. He seems to be sick too. I lent him some money out of kindness." Her father pinched her cheeks in amusement and said, "My son is kind." Gumin asked Yuanjing to write an IOU, but she did not say which family she was from. It was obvious that she wanted to give him money and save his face. She smiled and showed her white teeth. She flattered the old man. "It's all because of your good teaching, father." Her father changed the topic and said, "Even so, it's not good for my son to get too close to the poor, especially those with a stubborn temper." Yuanjing's ancestors were not poor, but his family was in decline. According to her father's temper, he naturally looked down on them. Chapter 1869. Gumin tilted her head and asked why. She knew that in this era, there was a clear distinction between the gentry and the commoners. There was almost no communication between the two classes, but she did not expect it to be so serious. Mr. Gu said, "Do you know who Zhu Ning is? Although that person is talented, he is a foolish, filial, and stubborn fool who can't stand up for himself. Gumin continued to ask. Mr. Gu then told her that Yuanjing's ancestors were rich. They had thousands of acres of fertile land, and did not have to worry about food and drink. However, his grandfather did not manage the business well, and Yuanjing's father was weak and naive. He was a nice person who was often taken advantage of by his relatives. The two generations squandered 90% of the family property. When it came to Yuanjing's generation, there was only 100 acres of fertile land left. The 100 acres of fertile land was lent by Yuanjing's mother to an ungrateful relative. Yuanjing tried to get his family property back, but his mother stopped him. She would rather suffer than lose face and reputation in front of her relatives. Yuanjing was very talented. He was born with a photographic memory and the ability to infer many things from one instance. When he was young, he studied in a private school in Langi. After that, his teacher introduced him to various places to study. He became more and more famous, but he was not valued because he came from a poor family. He seemed to have a hard life, but if Yuanjing worked hard, he could live a good life. Although there was a clear distinction between the gentry and the commoners, the rich families also liked to recruit talented people from poor families as their guests. However, Yuanjing refused to recruit and sponsor them. Papa Gu admired Master Yuanjing and was fond of his talent. After being rejected once, he no longer cared about Yuanjing. He was a scholar from a poor family. No matter how talented he was, he could not change the world. If Mr. Gu paid more attention to him, he would really think of himself as someone important. Gumin listened carefully. However, based on what she knew about history, she felt that Master Yuanjing did not look like a soft bun who was bullied by his relatives. On the other hand, Yuanjing's mother was indeed a weak woman who could be bullied. She did not know what she wanted to do to make herself and her son suffer for a little fame. If she had gotten back the 100 acres of fertile land, Yuanjing would not have to wear rags and hide in an old temple to avoid the snow. Out of curiosity about famous people, Gumin paid more attention to Master Yuanjing. She would occasionally send someone to inquire about him. Out of curiosity about famous people, Yuanjing's mother passed away due to illness. Before she passed away, she made the decision to let Yuanjing's fiancé marry into the family, saying that she wanted to see her son get married and start a family before she passed away. Hearing this news, Gumin was speechless. Was there a hole in the old madam's brain? His wife had just married and his mother had passed away. As a husband, what would Yuanjing think of his wife? Even before her death, this old madam still wanted to make her daughter-in-law unhappy. Besides, she had to observe mourning for her mother's death for 3 years, which was equivalent to her becoming a nun as soon as she married into the family, wasting her youth in vain. It would be better to let the girl find a better one and set her free. Of course, history had proven that Master Yuanjing was the perfect husband in the eyes of girls. According to Gumin's knowledge, many of the ancient costumes of Little Cookie were adapted from the daily jokes of Yuanjing and his wife. They were rather cruel to single people. After taking care of his mother's funeral, Yuanjing tried his best to take back the hundreds of acres of farmland that had been occupied by his relatives. Gumin nodded as she watched. This was what a man should be like. Yuanjing could not disobey his mother's order, but as a husband, he could not let his wife continue to live a hard life. He was a responsible man. In the blink of an eye, it was already early spring of the next year. Gumin was more or less used to this era. She had the nobility of the noblewomen of this era. Other than Master Yuanjing, who was a famous historical figure, Gumin also secretly went to see her stepsister, Guzhen. She was rumored to be a promiscuous and dissolute woman. She was Emperor Chen's birth mother and Lu Shi's legal wife. At that moment, Guzhen was still a childish little girl. She was much shorter than Gumin, because she was the daughter of a mistress who was not favored. Her treatment and daily expenses were not even 1/10 of Gumin's. The difference between a legal wife and a concubine was even greater than the difference between a scholar and a concubine. They had the same father, but the treatment they received was like heaven and earth. Gumin wanted to take care of her stepsister, but her mother was wary of her as if she was a thief. Gumin slowly felt bored. On this day it was chilly. Gumin asked her maids to fly a kite with her. Seeing the butterfly kite flying high, she could not help but smile widely. Fly higher. Gu Min pointed at the kite and instructed the maids. Suddenly, she heard a heavy sound of something falling into the water. Did you hear anything? The maids knew that Gu Min had excellent hearing and could hear it from afar, but they really did not hear anything special. Gu Min said, I did hear it. That sound, it sounded like something bigger than a rock was thrown into the water. One of the maids said, Water? The nearby ponds are all filled up. Another said, There's an ancient well in the backyard. An ancient well? Gu Min's expression turned cold. She ordered the maids to bring her to the ancient well. The maids were hesitant at first, but when they saw a little girl in the ancient well, they immediately screamed in fright. Seeing that they were of no use, Gu Min tied the hemp rope used to fetch water to a nearby rockery and tied the other end to her waist. Madam, Gu Min said, don't be noisy. She climbed down the ancient well and hugged the child who had lost all her strength. With one hand holding the child and the other holding the hemp rope, she stepped on the wall of the ancient well and climbed up. Fortunately, the walls of the ancient well were dry and there was little moss. Otherwise, it would be difficult for her to climb up. Move aside. Don't block the air. Gu Min asked the maids to move away. She laid the little girl who had fallen into the water on the ground and gave her artificial respiration. Wretch. The little girl spat out the well water she had choked on and slowly regained consciousness. There was still fear in her eyes. Little sister? Gu Min did not expect that the child she had rescued was actually her stepsister, Gu Zhen. Gu Zhen looked pitiful after she woke up. She curled up in Gu Min's arms. Gu Min's old auntie heart was revived by her affectionate and adorable look. It's okay. It's okay. Sister is here. Gu Min comforted Gu Zhen gently. Her gentle voice seemed to have the charm to calm one's soul. Thank you, sister. Gu Zhen lowered her head and twisted her fingers. Her pale little face blushed. How did you fall into the water? Gu Min asked Gu Zhen. The 36 stratagems of house fighting appeared in her mind. Before she could finish her imagination, Gu Zhen shyly and shamefully told her the reason why she fell into the water. She mischievously went to the backyard to play and accidentally dropped her favorite pearl hair clip into the well. She leaned over the mouth of the well to look down and accidentally fell in. It had nothing to do with house fighting. Gu Min looked embarrassed. Only then did she realize that she had demonized house fighting. Taking her father's backyard as an example, those concubines could not wait to please the first madam. How would they dare to play tricks? In this era, men were only responsible for carrying on the family line and taking care of the outside. The inner courtyard was women's territory. Usually it was handled by the first wife. Concubines did not have as high a status as imagined. If the first wife was unhappy, she could sell them to whoever she wanted. Even concubines could be chased out of the mansion if the first wife found out about something wrong. Some beautiful concubines not only had to sleep with the male master, but if there were guests in the mansion, they would also be pushed out to serve the guests. When Gu Min found out about this, she suddenly shuddered. Fortunately, her transmigrated body had a high status and a good background. Otherwise, wouldn't it be like playing with a concubine? No, this current identity was not 100% safe either. If the Gu family got involved in something and caused a disaster, Gu Min as a female might be banished to a lowly status and become a prostitute for the army or officials. She might even be sold to a brothel. She would never be able to make a comeback. So thinking about it, it was better to be modern. After the incident, Gu Zhen became closer to Gu Min and often played with her. Gu Min liked children. Gu Zhen was so cute and Emperor Chen's mother. Of course, she would not reject her. Because of Gu Min's care, Gu Zhen's treatment skyrocketed. Although it could not be compared to being favored, it was much better than before. Compared to Gu Min's love for Gu Zhen, Madame Gu was much colder. She is just a daughter of a mistress. No matter how she schemed, Min'er would only treat her better. Can she replace her? Madame Gu did not have a good impression of Gu Zhen, but she did not show it. Her daughter was born with dementia. Since she was a baby, she did not have a playmate of the same age. If Gu Zhen could see things clearly and make Min'er happy, it would not matter if she gave her some charity. Because of this mentality, Madame Gu turned a blind eye to Gu Zhen's affairs. Gu Min did not know about any of this. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 2 to 3 years had passed. Because Gu Min had regained her sanity, Madame Gu wanted to groom her into a perfect aristocratic lady. Coincidentally, Gu Min was also curious about ancient education. In addition, she had a mature soul, so she learned the boring content very quickly. At the end of the year, Madame Gu fell ill. As the eldest daughter of the first wife, Gu Min helped her mother deal with the affairs of the inner residence. Although she was young, she handled matters with the demeanor of a big family. She handled matters fairly and reasonably. Apart from that, she also tried to use her monthly income to do business. Speaking of this, there was another person, Gu Xian. Gu Xian was a young man that Gu Min had saved. This young man also had the surname Gu, but he did not have a proper name. After Gu Min asked for his opinion, she gave him a proper name, Gu Xian. He was the son of a merchant. Due to the decline of his family, he was sold to a broker by his creditors. In the end, he was bought by a farmer couple as a son. Gu Min saved him. At first, she did not pay much attention to him. Later, she accidentally discovered that he had an extremely high talent for arithmetic and business acumen. Thus, she promoted him and asked the clan's accountant to teach him. Gu Min also asked him to become an apprentice in her mother's dowry shop, so that he could learn more. Gu Xian did not let Gu Min down. He finished his apprenticeship in less than 2 years. Instead, he called her brother, and called her brother. The two of them spent their daily lives squatting in the tavern, drinking and chatting. After learning more about him, Gu Min found that Xie Qian was a complete martial arts fanatic at such a young age. What a waste of his face. You are very strong, but my spear skills are not weak either. After I go back and train for 2 years, I will definitely beat you. Gu Min casually agreed. At the same time, she silently eliminated Xie Qian from the list of marriage candidates. She did not want to perform martial arts every day after getting married. What was the difference between that and domestic violence every day? Only a fool would marry a martial arts fanatic. They could not be engaged, but they could be friends. Xie Qian had always thought that his little friend was a brother with a handle. He did not recognize him because of his poor eyesight. He did not expect to see a beautiful and imposing sister, dressed in women's clothing at a gathering of aristocratic families. He felt that his worldview had collapsed. It was as if the brother, who beat him up the day before, was just a figment of his imagination. Were all women this scary nowadays? In less than half a year, Gu Min heard that Xie Qian and his little friend, Wang Huiyan, were married. When Wang Huiyan reached adulthood, they could prepare for the wedding. Bah! Feudalism kills people. The average age of these two is only 12 or 13. They are just children in junior high, right? Are they engaged? No matter how much Gu Min complained, she knew that she would have to discuss marriage in another 2 years and join the ranks of early marriage and puppy love. Do you know someone in Hejian County? One day, the naughty child Xie Qian asked Gu Min a strange question. Gu Min could not help but roll her eyes and retorted. Hejian County is not big, but it is not small either. There are tens of thousands of people. How can I know everyone? Xie Qian coughed lightly. He felt that his question was a bit stupid. When I came to Langyi County a while ago, I saw a teenager on the way. Gu Min asked. And then? Xie Qian gloated. It seemed that he was coming to Langyi private school to study and travel. Halfway through, he revealed his money and was robbed. I saved him and asked if he knew anyone in Langyi County. He said that he knew the daughter of the Gu family. Gu Min clicked her tongue and said, "Is that child stupid? How can he call a girl's name so casually?" Xie Qian continued. He said that he was from Hejian County. His surname is Lu. Lu Shi? Xie Qian said. That's his name. Gu Min secretly curled her lips. Is he here to harm the cabbages in my field? This was probably the inertia of history. Lu Shi came to Langyi private school to study. Most likely he married Gu Zhen at this time. Gu Min's history results were quite poor. Much of her knowledge had been distorted by the popular ancient TV series in recent years. Therefore, she did not know that Gu Zhen had married someone else in history. After she became a widow, she could not resist the loneliness and hooked up with Lu Shi. The two did not have a plot of childhood sweethearts. She spoke very softly, so Xie did not hear her clearly. After paying for the wine, Gumin had just returned to her house. She heard that a relative had come to visit. After asking a little, she found out who it was. Why is Lu Shi here? Gumin frowned slightly. She was quite unhappy. She had reasons to hate Lu Shi. Firstly, he was a famous scumbag, pervert, and trash in history. Secondly, Gumin was close to her stepsister, Gu Zhen. She subconsciously raised Gu Zhen as her daughter. Which old mother would want her daughter to marry a scumbag? Although she did not like him, Gumin did not do anything to break them up. If Lu Shi did not marry Gu Zhen, where would she find the future Emperor Chen? What would happen to Jiang Chao if Emperor Chen was gone? The maid softly explained the reason for Lu Shi's visit. The content was similar to what Xie had told her. Lu Shi, who had no experience in surviving outside, was robbed by bandits. All his valuables were taken away. Gumin snorted and muttered harshly in her heart. That scoundrel is already merciful enough to let him live. Ancient times were different from modern times with a sound legal system. In this era, killing was also against the law, but the perpetrator had to be caught. Communication tools were outdated, information transmission was slow, and the methods of solving cases were crude. Every year, there were countless unjust and false cases. It was considered good if they could not catch the culprit, but if they were in a hurry to gain merit, they would have to resort to false accusations and make innocent people into criminals. Lu Shi had managed to escape with his life after encountering a robber. He was indeed Emperor Chen's father, blessed by the halo of history. Gu Min could not stop complaining in her heart. She returned to the backyard and changed into women's clothes. She dressed up before coming out to meet the guests. She glanced at Lu Shi from afar. His face was not as round as she remembered. He looked much thinner, and his facial features were more exquisite. Good-looking faces are all the same, but interesting souls are one in a million. It's useless no matter how good-looking you are. Inside you're a mess. Gumin felt pity for Lu Shi's good looks. He looked good, but he was a scumbag with potential. Lu Shi was surprised to see Gumin. Although Gumin had become more and more capable in the past few years, her beauty had also increased. If there was a beauty ranking for the gentry girls of the same age, with Gumin's beauty, she might be able to get the third place when her facial features developed. Because his money had been robbed, Lu Shi could only choose to stay at his relative's house for a few days. He would then send someone to Hejian County to send a letter to get the money. Lu Shi was arranged to stay in the guest room, far away from Gumin's house. How could there be any interaction between a man and a woman? Lu Shi got to know the young Gu Zhen first. Gu Zhen heard that her sister and Lu Shi had known each other since they were young. She often told her how good Lu Shi was. On the surface, Gumin listened attentively and occasionally echoed Gu Zhen's words. In fact, she was strangling Lu Shi to death 10,000 times in her heart. This scumbag. How old was Gu Zhen? He knew how to seduce her. Damn it. Fortunately, the child was forgetful. She quickly threw Lu Shi aside and did not mention him again. Little did she know that Madame Gu had warned Gu Zhen with a cold smile. Your sister is the legal daughter of the manor. Who do you think you are? How dare you scheme against her? Madame Gu was quite angry. She was the champion of the last house fight. What kind of devious thoughts had she not seen? Although Gu Zhen was only a toy that she had thrown to her daughter, she had never treated her badly. Gu Zhen's life was better than that of the legal daughter of the gentry. What was there for her to be dissatisfied with? She did not expect that Gu Zhen, that *tch, would have other thoughts. She tried to mislead Gu Min into falling for Lu Shi, who was the Lu family of Hejian. How could he be qualified to be with her legal daughter? Thinking of this, Madame Gu was depressed and could not help but speak harshly. Be more obedient. Don't you think about who controls your future marriage? Do you really think that you can overturn the world? In ancient times, children matured early. In Gu Min's eyes, Gu Zhen, who was only in elementary school, already knew how to plan for her future. For this reason, Gu Zhen talked good things about Lu Shi in Gu Min's ears every day. She was sure that her legal sister was pure and loved her. If Gu Min really liked the real Lu Shi, although it was impossible for the two of them to get married, it would create a bad reputation. Gu Min's future marriage would not be easy. If anything happens to my son's marriage proposal, do you think that you will have the chance to marry into a wealthy family? Madame Gu was not a soft-hearted person. If anything happened to Gu Min's precious eyeball, she would tear Gu Jin apart. Gu Min did not know about these details. Madame Gu also deliberately hid it. On the surface, she was still happy. In a few days, it would be the flower festival, the birthday of 100 flowers. At the same time, it was also a good day that the noble ladies of Langyi had been looking forward to for a long time. Young girls from various families were dressed in bright clothes. Their eyebrows were painted with different patterns of flowers, which made their fair skin look beautiful and dazzling. The well-dressed young girls walked with light steps. They were surrounded by maids and worshipped the flower god. The flower festival was not only a day for the noble ladies to go out for a walk and worship the flower god. At the same time, it was also a day for blind dates. Sigh. What a day for young men and women to confess their love to each other and abuse the single dogs. Gu Min was still young, but she was also dressed beautifully by her mother. Everyone knew that in a few years, Gu Min would probably attract the pursuit and secret love of countless young scholars. There was an elegant gathering by the river in the distance. Under the golden spring sun, those young, beautiful, and energetic girls added an indescribable holiness and beauty. Just standing there was an exquisite painting. Gu Min admired the beauties and looked at them with relish. A few years have passed, but you are still so vulgar. Who would disregard etiquette and climb a pear tree? Lu Shi was wearing a green robe. He glanced at the white socks on her feet, and looked away with his ears red. TSK, this is not your home. No one said anything about me, but you are the first to discipline me. Gu Min laughed. I heard a while ago that you went to a shady place again. If you have the time to discipline me, why don't you look at yourself? A gentleman must be upright. Lu Shi's cheeks turned pale when he heard that. You are so mean, Gu Min said. Although it sounds bad, it is for your own good. Look at you. You are not even 10 years old, and you are already thinking about debauchery. Who wouldn't be afraid of you in the future? Besides, when it comes to being mean, I am not as good as you. Don't forget that you have whipped me. Lu Shi's face turned red. I didn't hit you, did I? You didn't hit me, so you didn't hit me? Lu Shi stood under a tree half a foot away from Gu Min and said suddenly, I didn't go to debauchery. It was just a rumor. Then what were you doing there? Watching other people debauchery, Lu Shi said. They said it was an interesting place, so I went. Besides, Gu Min, who knew how to wander around Lang Lang Alley at the age of 6, was not qualified to say that he was debauchery. She felt wronged. Gu Min sneered in her heart. Even if people in ancient times matured early, they would not have matured so much that a 10-year-old child could do such inappropriate things. Lu Shi blinked and looked at Gu Min, who was sitting on the tree, and pursed his lips. Maybe it was because the sunlight was too bright, but he actually thought that Gu Min, who was fierce and vulgar, was kind of cute. Lu Shi shook his head secretly. He was probably blind. This year's flower festival was destined to be full of problems. After Gu Min worshipped the flower god, she heard someone calling for help. She followed the voice and found out that a woman from an aristocratic family had fallen into the water. She was surrounded by either maids or old nannies. None of them knew how to swim. If she called for a man, the woman would be washed downstream. Downstream? There is a waterfall downstream. Although the waterfall was not high, there was a deep pool at the bottom. If she fell in, she would most likely die. Gu Min kicked off her wooden clogs and jumped into the water. As she approached the woman, she tied her hands behind her back and dragged her ashore. Gu Min was not a good swimmer. If she was caught by the drowning person, both of them would probably die. Phew. Gu Min found that she had been saving people everywhere after her transmigration. First it was by Dai Gu Xian, then Gu Jun, and now this woman from an aristocratic family. Forget it. Good deeds will be rewarded. Gu Min helped the woman spit out the water she had choked. The maid beside her had already put cloaks on them. Some distance away, The scholars who were having a poetry meeting heard the commotion and rushed over. Lu Shi's sharp eyes saw Gu Min saving people in the water. Do you really want to die? Gu Min grabbed the cloak with one hand and rubbed her nose with the other. She frowned and said, saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. Lu Shi said harshly, are you going to shave your head and become a monk? What do you mean by saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda? If she failed to save people and ended up getting herself into trouble. Lu Shi secretly clenched his fists and frowned. Gu Min rolled her eyes at him. She was too lazy to talk to Lu Shi, who was becoming more and more of a scumbag. He had been flirting with Gu Jim before, but now he was concerned about her. Did he want to take advantage of her? Gu Min couldn't help but shudder when she thought of the Tom Sioux stallion she had seen in her previous life. The life of the aristocratic family in ancient times was not as boring as Gu Min had imagined. Instead, it was very enjoyable, such as bathing in hot springs and traveling. Gu Min was lucky enough to follow her father to Shangjing for a trip at public expense. Jishan Hot Spring is famous all over the world. There were many tourists in the past and the water quality was not very good. Now it's VIP treatment. Jishan Hot Spring had been there in her previous life. It had been very popular and attracted a large number of tourists even during the off-season. Gu Min had been there a few times in her previous life and had enjoyed it. However, there were many tourists and she lacked some personal space. Now that she had traveled 300 years into the past, it would be soulless if she didn't try the hot spring. Wonderful. Gu Min enjoyed it very much. When she came out of the hot spring, she heard someone say that there were poisonous snakes in the hot spring. Oh my, what kind of body do I have? I run into trouble wherever I go. Gu Min complained, but she was still very scared. Although she was a brave and silly girl, she was actually quite afraid of snakes. When she was a child, she had been bitten by a vegetable snake. It had scared her to death. Gu Min had never thought that she would run into the poisonous snake. As the saying goes, if the enemy doesn't move, I won't move. Gu Min was in a cold sweat confronting the poisonous snake while she hoped that someone would come to save her. The experience of her previous life had taught her that running away from a poisonous snake was a stupid move. You are usually quite smart. Why are you so stupid now? Why don't you run away? Gu Min had never thought that the person who would come to save her would be Lu Shi. Her legs were obviously trembling with fear, but she still held a stone and threw it at the poisonous snake, scaring it into a corner. Lu Shi felt that it was not a good place to stay for long. He grabbed her hand and dragged her to a crowded place. If I run away, do you think my feet are faster or the snake's? Gu Min asked. It's better to confront it and see who can't hold back first. Lu Shi was so angry that he almost laughed. His young and tender face looked a bit flustered and exasperated. Are you an idiot or something? Gu Min said. You are the stupid one. A bad student had the cheek to call her stupid? Lu Shi hadn't let go of her hand yet, so Gu Min clearly felt that he had increased his strength. It was a little painful. As a tough person, Gu Min didn't say a word and refused to give in. When Lu Shi found that her hand had turned blue from his grip, the blood drained from his face. I'm sorry. After saying that, he turned around and left. It seemed that he was running away. Gu Min looked at Lu Shi's back in confusion and snorted. What a strange temper. I was the one who was taken advantage of, but he acted like a little wife who was bullied. She didn't know when it started, but she found that Lu Shi's illness had become more serious. From time to time he would show her a complicated look, which made her hair stand. Crazy. When she was 11, Gu Min followed her mother to attend her grandmother's funeral. On the way back, they met bandits. Is the law and order so bad these days? Traveling through time was indeed not a good job. There were always bandits blocking the road and robbing people. Life was hard. If she could travel back in time, she really wanted to hold the heads of those girls who dreamed of traveling to ancient times and slap the water out of their brains. Those who didn't have any fighting skills shouldn't challenge the hellish world of ancient times. It was easy to die. There were 50 servants guarding the convoy, but there were 100 bandits. They belonged to a relatively large group of bandits. First, they launched a sneak attack and killed several of our servants with arrows. Even though Gu Min was good at fighting, she still had to protect her mother and the servants in the carriage. For a moment, she was overwhelmed. When reinforcements finally arrived, Gu Min let her guard down and was pushed off the cliff by a bandit who was pretending to be dead on the ground. Is falling off a cliff a must for women who travel through time? That was too much. As a koi carp, Gu Min was very lucky. Her clothes were hanging on the tree, which slowed down her fall. In addition, the cliff was not very high, so she only broke a leg and her face was scratched by some unknown sawtooth weeds. Other than that, there were no other serious injuries. Because of her leg injury, Gu Min couldn't walk. She had to stay where she was and wait for reinforcements. However, there were many venomous snakes and ants in the deep forest. She was scared just thinking about all kinds of venomous snakes and insects. She didn't dare to close her eyes. It was not until it was dark that she saw a faint flame. Could it be a will-o'-the-wisp? She couldn't be that unlucky, could she? She only heaved a sigh of relief when she heard the man's footsteps and heard him calling her name. I'm here. The person's footsteps became more and more rapid. Occasionally, she could hear the sound of weeds being cut down. Gu Min blinked and saw a figure approaching with a torch in his hand. He was holding a sword in his right hand and clearing the weeds to make a path. Lushi, the person said. I'm not familiar with you. Isn't it too rude to call me by my name? The gratitude that Gu Min had just felt deflated like a punctured balloon. Haha, Lu Zhongqing. Lushi rolled his eyes at her and sneered. Who's Lu Zhongqing? Gu Min shut her mouth. She had forgotten that the scumbag in front of her was only 11 or 12 years old. He was far from being old enough to have a courtesy name. She remembered Lushi's courtesy name because there was a Jiao Zhongqing in the famous Peacock Flies to the southeast. I was dreaming just now. I thought it was a celestial being. I didn't expect it to be a vulgar mortal like you. Lushi took a deep breath. His hand that was holding the torch turned white. Are you here for me? I'm here to collect your body, Lushi said. I didn't expect you to survive such a high cliff. Gu Min secretly clenched her teeth. If it weren't for her broken leg, she would have pressed Lushi to the ground and beat him up. Lushi also noticed that Gu Min was not right. If it were in the past, she would have threatened him with her fists. She was still sitting on the ground. Upon closer inspection, her cheeks were a little pale. Your leg. Lushi keenly noticed her unnaturalness. It's broken. Lushi's expression changed. Without thinking, he tore off the cloth from his shirt and removed the scabbard. What are you doing? Lushi said. I tied it up for you. Do you want to be a cripple for the rest of your life? Do you want your father to pay more head tax for you? What the F***ck? Gu Min was also angry. Lushi, the naughty kid, really deserved a beating. It was one thing to curse her for being crippled, but to curse her to be unable to get married for the rest of her life? According to the laws of Dongqing, if a girl was over the age of 18 and still not engaged, the family would have to pay more head tax. Gu Min said. Not to mention a crippled leg, even if both legs and arms were broken, there would still be people rushing to propose marriage. You don't have to worry. Lushi lowered his head to straighten her leg and sneered. Yes, the daughter of the Gu family. You have a good reputation. Even those famous people who fish for compliments and criticize people all day say that you are more than qualified to be the empress of the Xia kingdom. It would be good to marry you and worship you like a Buddha. Gu Min said. You sound so weird. Lushi didn't say anything. Seeing that some of the cloth was still missing, he tore 2 more from his shirt. How do you even know how to do this? Lushi sneered. I keep a disobedient dog in my house. My dog's leg is often broken. You'll understand after some practice. Gu Min was speechless. F***ck Lu Zhongqing. Hold the torch for me. I'll carry you out. Lushi straightened her leg and was already sweating profusely. Gu Min couldn't help but sigh. Why were all good-looking men scumbags these days? On second thought, it made sense. If a man wasn't good-looking, he wouldn't even have the right to be a scumbag. Gu Min said. You can go and get him. Lushi was unmoved. He looked like he would either carry her out, or Gu Min would stay there and wait for death. Gu Min couldn't help but think of a conspiracy. As she climbed onto his back, she muttered. Don't tell me you're trying to force me to repay you for saving my life? Lucy said in a low voice. Shut up. Gumin said. You're angry. Nonsense. I'll leave you there. This is the season when poisonous insects and beasts appear. Think about it. Gumin curled her lips and helped him hold the torch. Not long after, they met the servants who were looking for Gumin. Later, Gumin found out that it was Lucy's idea to look for her. Lucy was still studying in a private school. He heard that the convoy was ambushed and she fell off the cliff, so he came to look for her. TSK. What does this guy mean? Gumin stayed at home for 3 consecutive months, thinking about the intention of Lucy's strange behavior. Gumin laughed. Maybe he's in love with you. Gumin said, nonsense. It's not like he doesn't know his place. Why would he ask for humiliation? She had been in this world for 5 or 6 years. Of course, she knew the status of the Gu family in the aristocratic families. Although it was not as prestigious as the 4 noble families of Dongqing, it was still a big shot. Lucy's identity was not worthy of Gumin's family. It was impossible for the 2 families to marry. In addition, everyone knew that Lucy was a bad student. Just as Gumin said, even if she was crippled for the rest of her life, there would be many people who wanted to marry her. It would not be Lucy's turn. They wanted to marry her not because of her person, but because of her identity. Unexpectedly, Gu Zhen's words hit the nail on the head. What? Who did you say went to test my father's words? Time flew. In the blink of an eye, Gumin was also a 12-year-old girl. According to the tradition of the aristocratic families, she could prepare for marriage at this age. If she didn't choose a good husband now, when the girl reached marriageable age, good men of the same age would already be married. Lucy Lulangjun. Gumin finished chewing the snacks and muttered. Has he been possessed recently? The maid said. I've never heard of such news. Gumin said. If he's not possessed, then his brain is filled with water. This doesn't seem like something he would do. He knew that the daughter of the Gu family would not marry the Lu family of Hejian, but he still went to test his father's words. Wasn't that asking for humiliation? She couldn't figure it out. Before Gumin could think of a solution, Lucy asked her to meet him. Gumin went to see him with the intention of clarifying the situation. Of course, she couldn't go to the meeting alone. Her mates were waiting not far away. Have you been possessed recently, or have you hit your head? Lucy said, neither. I just heard that you're going to discuss marriage. Gumin said, even if I wanted to discuss marriage, I wouldn't choose you. What kind of father would be willing to push his daughter into a pit of fire? Lucy almost choked. He raised his hand and pointed at himself. I'm a pit of fire? Gumin said, you really don't know what's going on. Lucy didn't understand what she was saying. He thought it was some local dialect, which made him break down. I like you, I adore you, and I want to discuss marriage with you. Gumin didn't expect to be confessed to by a boy in the 1st grade of middle school. She was stunned for a moment. But, I don't understand. Gumin didn't think that she was being nice to Lucy. This boy was probably a masochist. How could he confess so straightforwardly? It made her a little embarrassed. Even so, Lu Longjuan's actions didn't mean that. It was Lucy's turn to be stunned. He asked what? Gumin said, he's neither good at literature nor martial arts. If you were his father, would you like such a boy coveting your daughter? Lucy couldn't defend himself. He was really a bad student. His family background was his shortcoming. He didn't have any talent or ability, so he really couldn't catch anyone's attention. Facts were facts, but it was impossible for Lucy not to feel uncomfortable when it came from Gumin's mouth. Lucy's eyes were filled with confusion. He had always felt that he was innocent when it came to studying. He clearly wanted to study well, but he didn't know why he couldn't get into it. There seemed to be a thought in his mind that was preventing him from studying. If he said such a lousy excuse, he would be ridiculed again. You're on your own, Lucy said. Wait, if I can study well, will you be willing to discuss marriage 2 years later? Once the gentry liked someone, it was usually impossible to break off the engagement. Gumin heard this and muttered in her heart. A natural scumbag. Who would be so bold as to let a girl waste time waiting for him? Besides, she didn't like Lucy. He was really confident. What's the use of studying for 2 years? Lucy was 12 or 13 years old. He had wasted so much golden time. What was the use of studying hard now? It was too late. In the end, the slap in the face came too soon. Gu Min heard that her father had been persuaded by Lucy to postpone the marriage for 2 years. Gu Min was speechless. She felt that she had a fake father. When she asked for the reason, her father said, Lucy's ancestor had some ability. He had once helped the ancestors of the Gu family. We let him try because of this kindness. After all, you don't have to worry about your marriage. It's good to delay it for 2 years so that he can see the seriousness of his situation. Otherwise, the two families will fall out. There were many people watching Gu Min's marriage. Her father was not anxious at all. He also wanted to keep his daughter for 2 more years. There was no harm in postponing the marriage. He could also repay the debt he owed to the Lu family. If Lucy became better and could carry the Lu family's name in the future, everyone would be happy. The corner of Gu Min's mouth twitched. She finally understood that her father had drawn a big cake for Lucy to hang on, and did not intend to fulfill it. After returning, Gu Min heard Gu Zhen mention something inadvertently. Lucy stayed outside for 2 whole days in order to see her father. It happened to be raining heavily these 2 days, and Lucy was soaked badly. Gu Dai said with a smile, I can see that Lu Langjun treats you sincerely. Gu Min just smiled and did not comment. If there was no heavy rain to set off a sad drama, it would be a sad drama without a soul. She originally thought that Lucy's popularity would last for a few minutes and he would give up sooner or later. His past dark history also proved this. Lucy was a complete failure in his studies. Even if he said he would work hard every time, he would give up halfway. Gu Min did not have high hopes for him at all. As usual, Gu Min wore men's clothes to play around. Almost all the aristocrats in Langya County knew that the daughter of the Gu family was beautiful for both men and women. She was unrestrained and romantic, attracting countless scholars who pursued fashion. Among the scholars, Gu Min's reputation was also very good. By chance, she heard someone praise Lucy's talent. Shocked. He actually became serious? Could it be that he was possessed by someone? If Lucy could become useful, a sow could climb a tree. Xie Qian said, Look at you. You don't seem to want to see him change? Gu Min said, Not really. It's naturally good if he can become better. It's a blessing for the people to have one less rich playboy. Xie Qian knew Lucy through Gu Min. A few months ago, he passed by Hejin County and saw him. In the past 2 years, Lucy had changed so much that it could be said that he had been reborn. Xie Qian almost did not recognize him. Then why are you like this? Gu Min said, I have always treated him as my brother-in-law. But he fell for me, his sister. How can I accept it? Xie Qian was surprised. Brother-in-law? Did he go and mess with your sister? Such a scumbag? He messed with the girl and still confessed his love for his sister. Was this man on the verge of death? Gu Min said, Not really. He didn't have much contact with my sister, but I heard from a master that the 2 of them had a relationship. She could not say that history told her that the 2 of them would get together. If Lucy learned well now, Gu Min would not have to feel guilty when he married Gu Zhen in the future. Xie Qian said, Ghosts and gods cannot be trusted. Gu Min said, Whether you believe it or not depends on the person. I believe it more. Back then, the master said that I lost my soul. Later on, my soul came back and I became normal. It can be seen that there is a way here. It is better to believe it than not. It is not wrong to fear the gods. Xie Qian said, Lucy asked me about your recent situation. Gu Min laughed. Does he still need to ask about my recent situation? She was famous in Langya County. Many aristocratic ladies regretted that she was a girl. Otherwise, they would have thrown themselves at her. Xie Qian said, Looking at him, I am afraid that, he is deeply in love. Gu Min said, Unrequited love. Xie Qian was speechless. She pitied Lucy for some reason. You don't like him at all? Gu Min sighed and said to her best friend, I can't say that I don't like him, but that is not love between a man and a woman. Xiaohe also knows that I am precocious and has always treated him as a child and a brother-in-law. Suddenly he said that he likes me. It is an indescribable feeling. Gu Min's feelings could be summed up in one sentence. I treated you like a child, but you actually want to sleep with me. Xie Qian was speechless. As it turned out, sooner or later he would have to pay for what he had done. Gu Min rejected Lu Shi with the excuse that he was neither good at literature nor martial arts. More than 2 years had passed, and he was famous for both literature and martial arts. For some reason, Gu Min sent someone to secretly inquire about Lu Shi's situation in the past 2 years. She didn't know if she didn't see it, but when she did, she was shocked. Coincidentally, Lu Shi came to Langye County again. Gu Min carried her sword and went to meet him aggressively. What are you doing? Lu Shi had dressed himself up nicely and waited for Gu Min's arrival anxiously. He never thought that she would draw her sword as soon as she arrived. What kind of demon are you? The Lu Shi that Gu Min knew was stupid, bratty, wicked, and had a nasty mouth. It was impossible for him to be the smooth and slick guy in the intelligence report. What should she do if her temperament had changed so much? It was most likely that she had been possessed. Lu Shi was speechless. They hadn't seen each other for more than 2 years, and this was the first thing she said. Chapter 1870. Are you sure you weren't possessed by something? Gu Min clicked her tongue in wonder. The foppish young master of the past had actually turned over a new leaf. Looking at his temperament now, he really had the air of a peerless young master. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would have thought that Lu Shi had been possessed by something. Was this the power of love? Lu Shi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew that Gu Min had a mental problem, but he didn't expect it to be so serious. People said that she was one of the 2 beauties, but in fact, she wasn't what she appeared to be. She pretended to be in front of others, but she was her real self. Well, he should be the inside. Ordinary people would praise him as a genius when they heard that he had turned over a new leaf. She was the only one who suspected that she had been replaced. Of course not. Lu Shi looked at her, and his eyes softened. Gu Min got goosebumps. Don't look at me like that. I'm not used to it, Gu Min said. Don't tell me that you still want to marry me. Lu Shi's eyes dimmed and he said helplessly, why aren't you moved? Gu Min was an honest person. She didn't want to drag Lu Shi down, not to mention that he had turned over a new leaf. It was too green tea to waste his youth. How should I put it? It's not that I'm not moved. Gu Min tried to save Lu Shi's face and got to the point. Many people make verbal promises, but very few actually put them into practice. You've changed so much in 2 years. It shows that you've really made up your mind. Shamelessly speaking, I was actually quite pleased with myself. But I can't force myself to accept someone I don't like. Gu Min wasn't a love brain, but she wasn't a girl who lacked love. If she were to get married, she would definitely find a man she liked under the premise that their families were of equal status. Anyone could have been considered, but Lu Shi was the only one who was out of the picture. He was the father of Emperor Chen. He should marry Gu Zhen and give birth to the future ruler of the world. Gu Min didn't want to ruin the course of history for personal feelings. Regardless of Emperor Chen's relationship, Gu Zhen was Gu Min's stepsister. Lu Shi was her brother-in-law. How could an older sister fight for her brother-in-law? Therefore, Gu Min was moved to reject it. Lu Shi's eyes dimmed, but he wasn't too surprised. He could feel whether Gu Min liked him or not. May I know the reason? His first love, which he had fallen in love with because he was blind, had died prematurely. He should at least let him die knowing. There are 3 reasons. Gu Min deliberated and said, first, marriage is about matching families. Between you and me. Even if I agree, my parents won't agree. The outcome was already decided, so why waste energy struggling? Second, I always thought that you liked little Zhen and treated you as a brother-in-law. But you said you liked me. Thirdly, I really don't know what you like about me. Lu Shi was not surprised by the first reason. He was only the second son of the Lu family in Hejian County. It was a bit whimsical for him to marry the daughter of the Gu family. However, what the hell was with the second and third reasons? Lu Shi's good temper, which he had cultivated for 2 years, was broken in an instant. He almost couldn't help but shake Gu Min's head to see if it was filled with water. How old is the Xiaojin you're talking about? Lu Shi couldn't help but ridicule. That girl is so cunning. Who would like her? Gu Min glared at Lu Shi and waved her sword in front of his eyes. You're saying I'm stupid? Also, little Zhen is such a simple girl. How could she be so cunning? Lu Shi was speechless. This was a standard suicide question. No, you're not stupid. A strong desire to survive prompted Lu Shi to choose to change the topic. He said, well, I'm blind. He was really blind to like Gu Min. Wasn't it enough to be abused once? He wanted to marry her and be abused for the rest of his life. Gu Min had saved him from the back of a frightened horse. Since then he had liked her. Most likely, there was something wrong with his heart. This time, it was Gu Min's turn to be speechless. The two of them sat opposite each other, staring at each other. It was quite a bit like enemies seeing each other. In the end, Gu Min was the first to retreat. When she left, Lu Shi called out to her and said, the reasons you mentioned, if I can overcome them one by one, will you be willing to marry me? Gu Min didn't answer, but she ridiculed Lu Shi behind Xie Qian's back. That guy won't shed a tear until he sees the coffin. I don't have much interaction with him. I really don't know why he likes me so much. She looked like she couldn't bear to be disturbed. Her mental age was old enough to be called an old auntie. She really couldn't bear to kiss the young Lu Shi. Xie Qian said, you have to be careful. Lu Shi is not a righteous person. I'm afraid he will use dirty tricks. He didn't know why he couldn't really like Lu Shi. He always felt that the guy wore many layers of fake masks. However, everyone else was praising Lu Shi, which made Xie Qian a little conflicted. Gu Min sneered. Come on, even if he turned over a new leaf, he's still the same cowardly look. He's still a teenager. Xie Qian looked at Gu Min suspiciously from the corner of his eyes. You have some misunderstanding about the term teenager. Gu Min said. What misunderstanding can there be? Xie Qian said. Normally, when an aristocrat is Lu Shi's age, the matriarch will help arrange a maid who knows how to deal with people. According to the current social atmosphere, Lu Shi was considered a man, but Gu Min, who was younger than him, looked at him with the eyes of a boy. In Gu Min's mind, a melodramatic drama she had watched many years ago immediately appeared. Are you saying that Lu Shi will be audacious enough to take advantage of me, and then send people to catch me in the act? Then I will have no choice but to marry him? Xie Qian couldn't help but say something good for the poor Lu Shi. Even though Lu Shi is not a righteous person, he is not a vicious person who would use such treacherous tricks. Moreover, you are a noble daughter of the Gu family. Even if you have a lover before marriage, your husband's family won't say anything. The current atmosphere was like this. The noble daughters of aristocrats were a little more open-minded. It was not a big deal to have a close man before marriage. Even if they were caught in the act, their reputation would at most be a little worse, but it would not be so bad that they had to marry Lu Shi. Gu Min said. TSK, then what am I worried about? After Gu Min left, Lu Shi, who was in the private room next door, was so angry that he crushed the teacup in his hand. He knew that he had a bad impression of Gu Min, but he never thought it would be to this extent. However, he loved her to the core and couldn't leave her. Lu Shi didn't know what he did wrong to make Gu Min hate him for so many years. What a loser. In his anger, Lu Shi swept the teacup on the table clean and smashed it with a clatter. Since you said it and slandered me like this, then you really can't blame me. He couldn't bear this bad reputation for nothing. Lu Shi cracked his knuckles. His originally clear eyes seemed to be filled with a deep pool with undercurrents surging under the pool. In the eyes of outsiders, Lu Shi's progress in the past few years could be considered to have skyrocketed, but marrying Gu Min was still wishful thinking. However, Lu Shi knew that it was not difficult to achieve this. Therefore, when the Gu family agreed to the Lu family's marriage proposal, their jaws dropped in shock. Gu Min was the most shocked. How was this possible? If she married Lu Shi, what would happen to Lu Shi and Gu Zhen's daughter, Empress Chen? According to historical inertia, could it be that after marriage, the sister-in-law and brother-in-law would have an affair and secretly have a child together? Did they really think that Gu Min was a hat weaver? Father, mother, I can't agree to this marriage. Gu Min voted against it. Only then did she realize that her parents looked a little unwilling. Her mother looked even more depressed. Lu Zhongqing, get out here. Do you want to live or not? Gu Min asked the reason, and was burning with anger. She carried her sword and visited the place where Lu Xi was staying at night to let him know why flowers were so red. Lu Xi was reading hard with a candle lit. He had maintained this habit for 2 or 3 years. Every day he would study until late at night before he could sleep. He was extremely sleepy. The image of Gu Min marrying someone else appeared in his mind, and he suddenly woke up. He was enlightened 7 or 8 years later than normal people. If he wanted to catch up or even surpass them, he had to put in more effort. Therefore, he only slept for 4 hours a day. Knowing that the Gu family had agreed to the marriage proposal, Lu Xi was in a good mood. He read 2 more books and coincidentally ran into Gu Min. If someone saw us having a secret rendezvous here in the middle of the night, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to explain themselves. Lu Xi got up and opened the window for her. He watched her jump in with her sword, and turned around to pour a cup of tea for her. Drink some tea to calm down. Don't get angry. Gu Min took the tea and drank it in one gulp. Her eyes were wide open. You're such a despicable person. Lu Xi blinked innocently. How am I a despicable person? Gu Min said. You deceived my parents with the help of a charlatan, and coaxed them into agreeing to this marriage. Don't you feel guilty? Lu Xi's solution was to ask a master to testify. He expressed his determination to his future parents-in-law, and promised them a lot of bargaining chips. Only then did he manage to persuade them to agree. When Gu Min heard this, her first reaction was that Lu Xi was itching for a beating again. Deceived. Lu Xi said, Master Liaochen of Hejian, primogenitor Xianhui of Jingyang, and Lord Daoist Xuan of Hanqing can all testify. One master was definitely not enough, so Lu Xi invited a few more. Coincidentally, Gu Min's fate was special. Without Lu Xi's persuasion, the 3 masters all gave Lu Xi the instructions he wanted. Gu Min was still very angry. She wanted to beat Lu Xi up. I like you. That is the love between a man and a woman. Why don't you understand? Gu Min said. You and I are not fated. Lu Xi's face darkened. He asked her. Then who should I be fated with? Guzhen. You are the one I like. Why do you always use Guzhen as a shield? You should have let me fall to my death. Who would have thought that you would save me? Now I can't let go of you. Gu Min threw her sword on the ground. Lu Xi said, I've wanted to ask you for a long time. Who do you see through me? Gu Min was shocked. She asked, What? Lu Xi said, You see someone else through me. We've known each other since we were young. Although I was naughty for a few years, I studied hard and tried to improve myself. My relatives around me are happy, but you seem to think that I can't change. You always look at me with disgust that I don't understand. Ask yourself. Other than the offense I made when we first met, I apologized to you afterward. The impact shouldn't be so deep. These words were, of course, half-truths. Lu Xi was only trying to deceive Gu Min. Who would have thought that he would find out part of the truth? Gu Min said, After I came back, I forgot what happened in the past, but I vaguely remembered something. In the following years, I had many strange dreams. In the dream, there was a man named Lu Xi. He was my brother-in-law. He was a rotten man. My sister was heartbroken by him. She came home many times to complain to me. I valued my sister so much. How could I be nice to such a man? Lu Xi was shocked to hear that. Because of this dream, I was wrongly treated by you for years? Gu Min's previous words were all made up. They were half-truths. In fact, she wanted Lu Xi to give up on breaking off the engagement. She felt a little guilty. I was young at that time. How could I distinguish between reality and dreams? I only felt that you were exactly the same as that despicable Lu Xi. I hated him because of him. A dream is a dream, and reality is reality. Am I that kind of person? Lu Xi suddenly felt wronged. He knew Gu Min's temperament. She had always been open to coaxing but not coercion. If you were unreasonable to her, she could be even more unreasonable. If you softened to her, she couldn't be tough. You're being unfair. As expected, Gumin's heart softened. She couldn't bear to see the cute boy's pitiful eyes. Even though she knew that Lucy was a scumbag in history, she still couldn't harden her heart. Can't you give me a chance? Lucy tried to persuade Gumin. You and I are childhood friends. We know each other very well. When we get married in the future, you can do whatever you want. If you marry the son of an unfamiliar rich man, I'm afraid you won't be so free and easy. Gumin was unmoved. She would rather be single for the rest of her life than mess up history and prevent her idol from being born. You don't understand. I have my own reasons. Gumin was very depressed, but she couldn't reveal the truth. She was depressed. Lucy pouted and said, Do you have someone you like? Like Xie Qian? I heard that you're close to him. Gumin sneered and said sarcastically, Do I look like someone who likes to raise a son? Lucy was surprised. A son? Xie Xiaohe would be furious if he knew. I treat you like a brother and sister. How dare you want to be my mother? You're the same. You haven't even grown your pubic hair, and you still want to marry me. Lucy rolled his eyes and pretended to untie his belt. Gumin was so scared that she jumped up from the ground and jumped 3 feet high. What are you doing? Lucy looked like he was going all out. I want you to see if my pubic hair is fully grown. Gumin couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of saliva when she was being teased by a teenage boy. Ugh. Perverted pervert. After being interrupted by Lucy, Gumin jumped through the window and left. She had forgotten the real purpose of her visit that night. Lucy hadn't agreed to break off the engagement. When Gumin came back to her senses, she slapped her forehead and was very depressed. Lucy was an attentive person. From time to time he would visit his future father-in-law and successfully coax the 2 unwilling elders to be happy. Gumin gritted her teeth when she saw the look of a young man in love. I don't believe that a little kid knows anything about feelings. Gumin ran away from home to drink with Xie Qian again. She couldn't help but complain about Lucy's strange behavior to her boyfriend. I don't have much contact with him. I really don't know why he has so many admirers. He doesn't sound reliable. Xie Qian said sarcastically. You're the one who's unreliable. Gumin said innocently, What about me? Xie Qian shook his head. Gumin probably didn't know that there were many people who secretly admired her. It was a scourge to have half a man and half a woman. Scholars held poetry gatherings. Not only would there be a thesis segment, but there would also be a martial arts competition. Gumin would always come out on top. The point was that she liked to wear men's clothes when she attended the gatherings. She looked handsome, and she was much more attractive than those scholars who were showy but not practical. Nowadays, men were not the only ones who were gay. Women also liked to sharpen their glasses. As far as Xie Qian knew, there were indeed many blind noble ladies who fell in love with Gumin. However, Gumin was a straight woman. She was the model of being single based on her ability. Even Lu Shi, who was so passionate and unrestrained, had his head broken in front of her. Not to mention those reserved women. Thinking of this, Xie Qian said, Both families have made it clear. Why don't you try to accept Lu Shi, even though he's not that great? Gumin regretted having such a bad friend. He's not that great, yet you're persuading me to accept him. Xie Xiaohe, you've changed. Gumin thought that she could make Lu Shi back off, but she didn't expect that she would be the first to give in. The story had to start from the old house fire. It was a hot summer with little rain. This year, Langya County was much hotter than in previous years. The rivers outside the city had dried up. Ancient buildings were mainly made of wood. Fires were easy to happen in this season. On this day, Gumin and a few of her girlfriends held a lychee banquet at the old house. The lychees at the banquet were late-ripening varieties. They had small seeds and a lot of pulp. They were placed in the well water. They were cold and sweet. There were more lychees this year. Gumin sent people to pick a few more baskets for her girlfriends to bring back. She also got someone to bring a basket for Lu Shi. Sister, you said that you have no feelings for Lu Zhongqing. It's obvious that you put him at the top of your heart. Gumin seemed to have cultivated Gu Zhan's sly character. Not only was she cheerful, but she also became bolder. She even dared to tease her sister. Gu Min looked at Gu Zhen with a helpless expression. This silly girl. The emperor in her life was about to become her brother-in-law, but she could still laugh. Gu Min was worried to death. If it wasn't for the Gu family's many years of upbringing, and the fact that running away from marriage would damage the family's reputation, she would have run away and broken the contract. Gu Zhen said again, "This Lu Zhongqing is really becoming more and more promising." A few days ago, a few great scholars gave him high praise. Gu Min pushed the lychee away in annoyance, and stuffed the pulp into Gu Zhen's mouth. She said angrily, "So many delicious things can't stop your mouth. Are you my sister or Lu Shi's sister? You put in good words for him every day. How many red seals did he give you?" Gu Zhen covered her handkerchief and smiled. "Sister, I'm happy that you can find Liangxiu." "What's there to be happy about?" Gu Min said. "This Lu Shi. I originally wanted to tell him to you, but now he's ruined it." Gu Zhen was stunned when she heard that, as if she had been petrified. Gu Min was also open-minded. Or rather, she had raised Gu Zhen as her daughter all these years and did not have her guard up. "Back then, I asked an expert to read his horoscope. The expert said that he had a golden marriage with you. I didn't agree at first. After all, he's a playboy. Who would be willing to push a sister into the fire pit?" Gu Min sighed and nagged, not noticing Gu Zhen's complicated expression. After that, Lu Shi made up his mind to change for the better. A prodigal son turning over is considered precious. Now that he's making progress, he's worthy of my sister. Gu Zhen then said with a pale face, "Sister, what are you talking about? He's my sister's future brother-in-law." Gu Min said, "That's why I said Lu Shi is a troublemaker. Can't he like a real couple? Why does he have to keep an eye on me?" Unbeknownst to him, Gu Zhen had secretly twisted her handkerchief into a ball. She had long urged Gu Min and Lu Shi to get close to each other, and repeatedly helped Lu Shi. Naturally, she had her own selfish motives. Who would have thought that Lu Shi would turn over a new leaf? Now, other than his poor background, he was considered top-notch among his peers in other aspects. Of course, the current Lu Shi was more than enough to be a match for her, the daughter of a concubine. However, Lu Shi and Gu Min were engaged. "Sister, you really don't like Lu Zhongqing?" Gu Zhen asked her awkwardly. "If that's the case, why don't you make it clear?" Gu Min rolled her eyes inelegantly and sighed. "How did I not make it clear? But Lu Shi is a person who won't turn back unless he hits a brick wall. Now that father and mother have agreed to the marriage, it's impossible to break it off easily. Otherwise, the two families will be completely ashamed and become enemies." How many times had she rejected him righteously? She had even said something as ridiculous as, "It's useless for you to have my body. You can't have my heart." In the end, Lu Shi was even more mischievous. What do I want your heart for? I just want your body. Pervert." In order to put the historical couple, Lu Shi and Gu Zhen, together, she had really used all her strength. Gu Min sighed. "Sister, think of another way. She was just a cannon fodder who didn't even have a name in history, standing between Emperor Chen's parents. She was really afraid that she would die young due to historical inertia. Although Professor Lu Shi's textual research said that Gu Min was Emperor Chen's mother, how could she believe something that the royal family hadn't acknowledged? In the afternoon, she had solemnly vowed to make Lu Shi give up early, but at night, she had slapped him in the face. Gu Min hadn't been sleeping well recently. She had to drink some sleep aid to calm her mind, so she slept more soundly in the second half of the night. Who knew that an accident would happen at this time? "There's a fire." A maid was paying respects to the ancestors in the middle of the night. Because she was worried that she would be caught, she left in a hurry after the ceremony and didn't extinguish the lit incense. However, it was those few incense sticks that accidentally ignited the firewood that was piled up. Gu Min's courtyard was the closest, so she was the first to suffer. Coincidentally, there was the night wind to help the fire burn, so the fire was out of control. Lu Shi heard the commotion and rushed over. The first thing he did was ask about Gu Min's whereabouts. Only then did everyone realize that she wasn't there. How did you serve the First Lady?" Lu Shi was almost angered to death by these maids. For so many years, Gumin hadn't blushed at the maids. She rewarded them from time to time, and never said a harsh word. How could there be such a good master in the world? These ingrates were good. They only cared about themselves and didn't even know that the First Lady hadn't rushed out of the fire. Lu Shi rudely snatched the thin blanket and the bucket of water from the servant's hands. He then drenched himself from head to toe and rushed in without another word. At this time, the fire burned half the sky red. Everyone could only see the orange flames that shot up into the sky. For some reason, Lu Shi had a strong thought. He wouldn't die if he rushed in, and Gu Min would definitely still be alive. Speaking of which, it was strange that Gu Min was still sleeping well. The area around her bed hadn't completely ignited. They're all asleep now. Lu Shi couldn't care less about being angry. He wrapped Gu Min in the wet blanket and carried her by the waist. Perhaps it was because the noise was too loud. Gu Min slowly woke up. She was shocked by the scene around her. Lu Zhongqing? Ahem. Don't talk. The fire was burning fiercely, but the two of them were extremely lucky and managed to escape from the King of Hell. As soon as they rushed out, the beam that was entangled by the flames couldn't bear the burden and fell down. If the two of them had been one step slower, they would have been crushed by the beam and buried in the sea of fire. It took Gu Min a long time to wake up from the aftereffects of the calming soup. She looked at the boudoir in the sea of fire, her face pale. Just now she was almost burned to death in her sleep. She had been in the ancient times for so many years, but it was the first time she had encountered such a big fire. It just had to be 1 month after her engagement with Lu Shi. Could it be? Was history trying to correct her? The bug who had interfered with Emperor Chen's parents? Gu Min trembled in fear. Lu Shi didn't care about his embarrassment and hugged her tightly, comforting her with a gentle voice. Lu Zhongqing, did you want to die just now? Gu Min suppressed the guesses and fear in her heart. She turned her head and saw that half of Lu Shi's long hair was burnt. His sleeves and clothes were also burned clean by the flames. She felt a myriad of emotions in her heart and couldn't help but say, "You almost died. If I didn't go in, you would have really died." Lu Shi used his hand to extinguish the flames at the end of his hair, and smiled bitterly. "So what if I die? At least I'll die with you. At least I'll fulfill my wish. I don't ask to be born on the same day of the same month and year, but I ask to die on the same day of the same month and year." Gu Min swallowed the words that almost slipped out of her mouth. She gritted her teeth and said, "It's all because of you." Lu Shi was very innocent. "What does this have to do with me?" Gu Min felt wronged. "If I ruin your marriage, I'll be struck by lightning. This is retribution. What you said is somewhat reasonable." Lu Shi nodded in agreement. "Then if you marry me and complete this marriage, God won't make things difficult for you. You are my God's match." Gu Min was angry. "I'm being serious with you, and you're still being naughty." She moved to another courtyard after her boudoir was burned down by the fire. It had been a few days since the fire, but she still couldn't get rid of the aftereffects of the incident. Instead, she fell deeper and deeper into it. She couldn't concentrate, and Lu Shi's solemn words often rang in her ears. It made her heart beat erratically. Occasionally, she couldn't help but blush. She inexplicably felt that Lu Shi was actually a little handsome. Who's God's match with this pervert? Even though the outside world had a lot of praise for Lu Shi, in Gu Min's eyes, he was still a steady and playboy who deserved to be beaten and scolded. What kind of gentleman was as gentle as jade? It was all an illusion. Lu Shi's mouth was still annoying and poisonous. Every time it could make people half dead. In order to make Lu Shi completely give up, Gu Min simply asked him to go to the Shangfu Temple in Hejian County to pay a visit to Master Liaochen. Master Liaochen was a real swindler, and Gu Min and he could be considered friends despite the difference in age. He also vaguely guessed her secret, so Gu Min was very relaxed in befriending him. She didn't have to worry about exposing herself one day. Lu Shi was taken to the side by the novice monk to play with the mud. Gu Min looked distressed as she told her friend about her difficulties. "Lu Zhongqing, that stinking shameless guy, actually used your name to deceive my parents and coax them into agreeing to the marriage. I'm so worried. I'd rather tear down 10 temples than ruin a marriage." Gu Min used both of her fingers to make a 10 sign and said gloomily, According to what I know, Lucy should be fated with my stepsister. But in the end he fell for me. Is it because I've affected history? Master Liaochen twirled his Buddhist beads and smiled as he quietly listened to his young friend's worries. Gu Min frowned awkwardly. If these two don't have TSK, don't just laugh. Think about it carefully. Where should I get an Emperor Chun who can unify the 9 states to compensate the people of the world? If history changes because of this, I'll be a sinner. Liaochen said. Isn't it good to let nature take its course? Gu Min said solemnly. No, if Emperor Chen doesn't come into being, according to the research of our historians, I'm afraid it will take another 1,000 years before we can enter that kind of prosperous Taiping. The Jiang dynasty was established for more than 300 years, and it was peaceful for more than 300 years. According to the situation of my era, as long as the country doesn't court disaster, the peace can continue for a long time. If history changes, who knows how many more people will die? Liaochen said, according to my understanding of you, you also have feelings for almsgiver Lu, even if you don't realize it. That's not important. Gu Min waved her hand and said, what's so great about love? How can it be compared to the trend of the world? She was a little distraught. Lucy kept pestering her, but she wasn't cold-hearted. She was more or less tempted, but she couldn't be tempted. In the end, she could only blame Lucy for not seducing her. Wouldn't it be better to obediently follow history and be the father of Emperor Chen? Gu Min suddenly thought of something and said gloomily, it's okay if you don't talk about this, but I get angry when you mention it. How can you help Lu Zhongqing testify and say that he and I are fated to be married? If the two of us don't work out, I'm afraid I won't live long. My parents were fooled by this. Liaochen smiled. A monk doesn't lie. Gu Min sneered. All right, you've lied in front of me many times. Your credibility is ruined. I don't believe a single punctuation. The two of them looked at each other quietly. Gu Min's smile faded, but Liaochen was still smiling. Don't lie to me. Gu Min's face turned pale. Liaochen said, I never lie. Perhaps, the history you know is not the whole picture. Impossible. The royal family has never acknowledged that Emperor Chen's mother is someone else. Almsgiver Lu came to me, and I have secretly calculated for the two of you. There is indeed a fated marriage, Liaochen said. A long time ago, you said that Lu Shi's daughter has the potential to ascend to the throne. I have also calculated. And Lu Shi does have this fortune. Gu Min was confused by his words. Cut it short and simplify. You know I'm not as smart as you. Liaochen said, Ziwei's descent is fate. It will come. Why don't you let nature take its course? Gu Min said, are you saying that I'm overthinking? Liaochen stared at her, and Gu Min was terrified by his stare. Liaochen speculated. The Emperor Chen you mentioned is probably the same as you. He had carefully calculated Lu Shi's fate with women, and there was nothing special about him. Later, Liaochen visited another friend in private, and his friend calculated that the Emperor star of Ziwei was moving. Calculating the years, it was probably when Lu Shi's daughter was 11 or 12 years old. Combining this with Gu Min's special case, Liaochen couldn't help but think. Perhaps, Emperor Chen was not born in this realm, but came from another world. There are indeed people on the internet who speculated that Emperor Chen was a transmigrator. Gu Min was shocked at first, then immediately widened her eyes. She said, after all, according to the information provided by the imperial family, Emperor Chen was a nobody among the noble ladies before she was 12 years old. After she turned 12, she suddenly had unparalleled martial arts, and her temperament changed drastically. She killed people like she was killing chickens. Even if there was an unofficial history saying that she met an immortal by chance, there shouldn't be such a drastic change. Liaochen, you mean? Emperor Chen doesn't care who her parents are, and she will come when she is supposed to? If she really was a transmigrator, it really had nothing to do with who her parents were. Liaochen said. She and Lu Shi are fated to be father and daughter. In other words, a change of mother wouldn't have much effect on Emperor Chen's descent, as long as the father wasn't the old man next door. Gu Min was speechless. Her worldview was shattered. Liaochen laughed. This matter concerns the future of the world, and the fate of Ziwei. Please consider it carefully. Gumin couldn't help but support her chin. Are you sure you didn't collude with Lu Shi to lie to me? A monk doesn't lie, Gumin said. If that's the case, it's not that I can't give Lu Shi a chance. It's better to find someone familiar and easier to bully, so that I can live comfortably. But when I think about how Lu Shi was supposed to be my brother-in-law, I can't get over it. Liaochen said helplessly. How do you know that history is definitely true? Gumin asked in surprise. What do you mean? Liaochen said. Lu Shi and Gu Zhen were indeed fated to be husband and wife, but the two of them were not fated to have children, including those who were born and those who were not. Although my skills are shallow, I can still calculate this. If that's the case, how can you be sure that the Emperor Qin you know is Gu Zhen's daughter? Gumin's face turned pale after hearing this. Liaochen lightly threw another bomb at her. I remember you said that the later generations found that the time of Emperor Chen's birth and Gu Zhen's marriage to Lu Shi were different. This was also one of the strong pieces of evidence for the scholar to overturn that Gu Zhen was the birth mother. Gumin frowned. I did say that, but other than the fact that Emperor Chen's mother wasn't Gu Zhen, there was another inference. The unofficial history said that Gu Zhen was discontented after being widowed, and had a rendezvous with a strange man. That was why she married Lu Shi with the child in her womb. Liaochen laughed. I also said that the child should be Lu Shi's bloodline then. Gumin's face turned pale when she heard this. Then the child's birth mother was someone else. Even if Gumin was slow to react, she still understood the meaning behind Master Liaochen's words. At this moment, Gumin suddenly remembered the details before she transmigrated. When she taught Lu Shi that Emperor Chen's birth mother was Gumin, she curiously went online to search for information about Gumin. There were very few records, and the few sentences were obtained from unofficial history inscriptions and miscellaneous discussions. According to these written records, the historical Gumin had congenital dementia. According to Professor Lu Shi's research, congenital dementia was due to being born too late, resulting in a lack of oxygen in the womb and abnormal brain development. In addition, Gumin's year of death was uncertain, but it was definitely after the birth of Emperor Qin, and before Gu Zhen married Lu Shi. Time was so sensitive, Gumin suddenly felt very frightened when she thought about it. Liaochen said, history is history, but people are in the present. Donor, you must not be affected by it. Gumin smiled bitterly. Let me think about it. Liaochen asked her curiously, if Emperor Chen's mother was really you, what would you do? What else can I do? I'll just take it one step at a time. Most people will still follow the course of history. After all, that future is really beautiful. I hope it will come as soon as possible, so that more people can enjoy that kind of happiness. I've lived in this era for so many years, and with every day that passes, the thoughts in my mind become stronger. Gumin said, but Lu Shi, I really don't know how to treat him. Even if she had a good impression of him, Gumin felt uncomfortable when she thought of the things that Lu Shi had done in history. Logic told her that she should treat him differently, but she couldn't do it emotionally. At that moment, she was very conflicted. After saying goodbye to Liaochen, Gumin was still a little distracted. Lu Shi was angry when he saw her and couldn't help but grab her wrist and drag her to the backyard of the temple. The backyard was filled with pine and cypress trees, full of lush greenery. The cicadas were noisy, but it couldn't cover up Lu Shi's anger and sadness at that moment. Gumin, do you have a heart or not? Gumin's emotions were in a mess, and the cicadas around her made her even more upset. She said angrily, how am I not having a heart? Lu Shi angrily pressed her hand against his chest and questioned, if you have a heart, why did you force his actions on me for the man in your dreams? I'm innocent. Did this heart ever tell you who Lu Zhongqing likes? In the face of such a strong and straightforward confession, even Gumin, who had lived 2 lives, couldn't handle it, not to mention that she had some feelings for Lu Shi. Her cheeks were dyed red, and she tried hard to withdraw her hand, but Lu Shi wouldn't let go. He would rather wrestle with her than let go. Gumin tried a few times, but her wrist was still swollen from Lu Shi's grip, and he still wouldn't let go. She was so angry that she scolded him. Lu Zhongqing, do you want to break my hand? I also want to break your leg. Lu Shi was silent for a moment, then suddenly clenched his teeth and said, then you can't leave. Gu Min secretly cursed. Lu Zhongqing didn't walk the path of a scumbag, but instead ran in the direction of a sickly person? A sickly person was a sickly person, but not her. You can't beat me. Gu Min cruelly exposed the truth. Not to mention Lu Zhongqing. Even the world's top generals could at most fight her to a draw. Even though she didn't know the origin of Emperor Chen's body refining technique, it was indeed very strong and abnormal. There were even people on the internet who guessed that Emperor Chen came from a galaxy with a high civilization, and by chance he had transmigrated to the ancient times, which perfectly explained all the doubts left in history. Of course, these guesses had no basis, and the imperial family had never commented on them. After Gu Min had transmigrated, she felt that the possibility of Emperor Chen being a transmigrator was very high. Perhaps she could do something for him. Then kill me, or else I won't let go. Lu Shi almost threw caution to the wind. We're already engaged. If you still won't marry me, then you can marry someone else. Just you wait. I'll do whatever it takes to make you a widow for the rest of your life. Fu *K. Lu Zhongqing's sickness was not light at all. Who taught you to say this? He was such a good kid, but how could he be so sickly and sickly? You forced me. Lu Shi said confidently, but he felt wronged. Why did you sentence me to death because of a person in my dream? You know that I admire you like you, and that's why you hurt me with this. What did I do wrong? Gu Min had always been amenable to coaxing, but not coercion. If Lu Shi was tough, she would fight back, but if he was weak, Gu Min would soften. After so many years, Lu Shi had long figured out her routine. This isn't just. Gu Min opened her mouth to explain, but accidentally met Lu Shi's bloodshot and watery eyes. She swallowed her words and was stunned for a while. She said angrily, "What are you looking at? Go home. Go and be your bridegroom." Gu Min didn't know what kind of image Lu Shi had in history besides being labeled as a scumbag, but she knew that Lu Shi was stubborn and would do what he said. If she didn't take in this little vixen who was constantly on the verge of being blackened, he would really make her a widow for the rest of her life. Since marrying Lu Shi wouldn't affect the future of Emperor Qin, and she was a little interested in him, she might as well let it be. The only person she owed was Gu Zhen. She would think of a way to make it up to her in the future. But Master Liaoqin's words made her very concerned. If Lu Shi and Gu Zhen were destined to be husband and wife, and Gu Min married Lu Shi, under what circumstances would Lu Shi marry Gu Zhen? Would it really be like the official history, where Lu Shi was not content with his wife and colluded with his widowed sister-in-law? The two of them worked together to plant a green grassland on Gu Min's head, and they even dared to herd sheep and ride horses on it. Lu Shi was ready to give up everything he had. He didn't expect Gu Min to change her mind at the last minute, which shocked him. Gu Min lifted her feet to leave, but found Lu Shi still standing in the same spot. Are you planning to stand in the backyard of the temple and turn into a stone to watch your wife? She pulled her hand, and Lu Shi followed her stupidly. When she walked, he walked, and when she stopped, he stopped as well. He stood there as if he had lost his soul. Are you really stupid? Gu Min murmured. Lu Shi was so nervous that he didn't even know where to put his hands. Gu Min was speechless. Lu Shi was really good at acting. Just a moment ago, he had shamelessly turned into a sick person and threatened her, but now he had changed his personality and turned into a shy, innocent boy. You really don't have a split personality? Lu Shi took a long time to recover from his ecstasy and asked in surprise, "What is a split personality?" "Crazy. Maybe there is, but it's all because of you." Lu Shi pouted. "One moment you are heartless, and the next moment you give people hope." Gu Min chuckled. "Then I'll continue to be heartless." "No, if you are heartless, you might as well stab me to death with a sword." Lu Shi hugged her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. "Of course, even if I die, I will turn into a ghost." "If you dare to marry someone, I will dare to make you a widow for the rest of your life." Gu Min was speechless. What the F***ck? Big brother, how much hatred do you have? Genius 1 second to remember website. Mobile version. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.